This is Matt Brown, and you're listening to Just a Good Conversation. When great athletes have great photographers photographing them, chances are great photos will be made. My guest, Peter Reed Miller, has been doing that for over 40 years. And along the way, he's made some of the most iconic sports images of our time. And yet, he still doesn't believe he's made it yet.
I never felt I made it. I mean, all I did, this is a joke among people who've known me a long time. Every year, I believed they were not going to give me another contract. Every year.
I'm Matt Brown, host of Just a Good Conversation. Take a listen to all our archives. My guests have ranged from Emmy and Oscar winners, college coaches, and professor, author, and photographer Todd Bigelow.
I did this not long ago, and I picked up a new client because I asked when I was out of town to meet with somebody for a couple hours, or just for a little bit. We ended up meeting for a couple hours over coffee, and I got, multiple jobs from him and his other editors at this publication. And, so making those cold calls, those editors, to this day, I mean, they're different people and so forth, but they still want to find new talent. So it's not something strange to them. They want to find new talent.
Go to justagoodconversation.com for all our archives. Let's take a quick break for a sponsor before diving into my conversation with Peter Reed Miller. I am so fortunate to be sitting in front of a master today.
Where is he? Is he next to me?
He's
somewhere?
coming. He's coming with lunch in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
How are you, Peter?
I'm good, Matt. It's great to see you. It's great to have you
fantastic
here.
to see you doing well.
Yeah.
Look at the
doing
holiday
great.
spirit in your house. This is fun.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
great.
I've known you for a very long time. I've known of you even longer. The mystery, like we talked about, like photographers never getting their picture taken, never being the exposure of like how writers would do stuff. Like everybody knows what like Rick Riley looks like or DeFord, but finding out what a Peter Reed Miller looked like in the 70s or 80s was nearly impossible.
Well, there was one-page ad they did on their photographers that ran a couple of issues, I think, but it's pretty funny. It's funny to go back and find
and
it.
look at everybody.
Yeah.
And so when I first get to lay eyes on you, you were everything I expected. Like you were, because I look at you like you're, and we'll talk about it. Like you should have been a swimmer or a volleyball player because you're tall and you look very athletic, and it's like, but you're a man with a camera. You're the complete opposite of what most normal photographers look like. They're not normally tall, athletic-looking guys. As you know, photographers through our lives normally are short and squatty.
The Neil-lifers of the
yes,
world.
the Neil. Oh, yes, Neil Life. Yeah, right? So when you grew up as a kid, were you an athletic kid? Were you an athlete?
Not particularly. I was...
So you've been hiding it all these years well.
Yes. No, I actually rode on the crew team, both in high school, because I went to a boarding school back east, and literally my dad did not want me to play football because he'd hurt his knee playing football in high school, so he didn't want me to play, and this was the kind of school whereas if your dad said he can't do that, you didn't do it.
Right.
So I started on the crew knowing nothing about it and really got into it, and then I rode for 4 years at USC, too.
So where about on the East Coast?
Phillips Exeter in New Hampshire.
Okay.
So it was an interesting 2 years. It
Yeah.
was, it was all boys at that time,
Sure.
and we were all little Holden Caulfields, little tough guys. And
Did you take the crew? Were you?
Yeah, I did. I enjoyed it. And then when I went to USC, well, at USC, there were very few sports that you could actually participate in that you weren't already sort of a professional, I mean, football, all the big sports. But crew was pretty wide open. I mean, we weren't very good. That's certainly, we had a losing record, but it was great to just go down there every day. We went down to the harbor at like 6 in the morning and rode around there. And then we raced and raced all up and down the West Coast. And it was a lot of fun.
Was that scary for you coming from the East Coast out to school for California?
Well, no, because I was my family was already living out here. So
Okay.
I had gone back. It was scarier going to the East Coast, although originally from Chicago, so I've kind of been everywhere.
All right, so you've jumped a little bit.
Yeah. But, coming to USC with a couple of years experience in crew, nobody had that. So I was pretty I was pretty good for that sort of thing.
What was your body look like back then? Were you like just long and lean? Because that's what rowers are, right?
Yeah. I think I weighed like 165.
Yeah.
Which,
How tall were you then?
6'3".
Whoa. You were like zero body fat. You were just like this poster boy.
Well, it was a great workout.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. And we did some shore work, some land work, weights and everything, but that wasn't really as much as it is now. Now those guys work out, every day of the year. We would have a spring practice that was a couple of months, but no races. Then we'd race. Fall was the racing season. So,
when was the last time you were in a boat?
Oh God, I went back to Philadelphia to visit a friend who was rowing at that time at Vesper Boat Club, which is and I went out one time. And that, it was maybe 3 or 4 years after college, and that was it's like if you'd been playing college football and you took 3 or 4 years off, and then they put you in a quarterback in a real game. It was like everybody was polite, but it was clear that I was not invited back. I was not going to make the Olympic team.
Is it a rhythm thing you kind of lose, other than maybe like cardio? But is it that kind of?
Yeah, it's a rhythm. It's a feeling. It's a balance because the boat's very narrow. You're balancing it with your oars, and it's a strength thing too. Yeah,
right.
it's just.
Is it 4 or 8 man boat?
I almost always rode in an 8.
Okay.
But there's 8s, there's 4s, there's
Two,
skulls,
right.
2s, and then there's single skulls.
Oh.
So I've taken a single skull out and I flipped it over. And they are hard to get back.
I bet.
Yeah, but
I've never been in one. I've only photographed it, and that alone is terrifying.
Yeah.
Man.
No, it was fun. It was a great way to be able to compete on a college level and 4-year varsity letterman at USC.
Hey, not bad.
Yeah, actually, we had that was the days of freshman team. So we
I was
going to
say, right?
Yeah.
So that was still the 3-year varsity.
Yeah.
You, Lou Alcindor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Me and Kareem, we go way back.
Yeah. What year were you at SC?
I was at SC. I started in 65, I believe, and
now what drew you to SC? Was it just Gruent?
Okay, so 2 years. Now this is back when it went K through 6, junior high school, which is now middle school,
right,
was 7 through 12, and then high school started. So it was basically 4 years. But I had 2 years of actually high school was 4 years. So I had 2 years at Exeter. I left there. I came back. I went to Pasadena High School. What a cultural shift that was. Girls, cars, the Beach Boys, everything. So
I know that must have been unbelievable.
It was great. It was dying and going to heaven.
Yeah.
But I was a junior at PHS, but I was really ahead of, this Exeter was hardcore, classes of 12 people around the round table, the whole thing. They educated you there.
Right.
So my counselor, I take all senior classes, and my counselor says, well, what do you want to do next year? You want to go to Pasadena City College? And I went, not particularly. He said, well, USC has an early admissions program, and they're trying to, at that time, USC wasn't quite as academically powerful as this. So they were kind of beefing up. They were looking for smart kids to bring in. Mm-hmm. So I actually started USC when I was 16.
Okay.
And I don't recommend that for anybody.
No. That must have been
intellectually, I was fine. Socially, I sucked.
Right.
And
you're there with women now.
Yeah.
You went from school with girls
to school with boys, really.
Right.
1 year girls at Pasadena High, and then women, yeah.
You had no game.
Yeah,
you had no idea what was going on.
No.
And you must have looked such like a little kid.
I was big at least. I mean, I had that going for me, so I kind of didn't look that out of place.
Okay.
But it was just was out of place, mentally and emotionally. So, I made it through, and I kind of went. I did a master's in public administration, which I never did my thesis on, and then I moved. I went to Penn for a year, to Wharton, and then I was just like done with school. I was burned out, Right. So I moved back here in, I guess 1970. I moved to Venice.
So when you're at SC, is there any thought of photography?
Oh yeah, I got into photography when I was at Phillips Exeter.
Okay. Because your grandmother was the
Yeah,
one that,
well,
poor woman.
there were a couple of guys I knew who were, and the thing about Exeter, I was a scholarship boy, but most people had a lot of money.
Okay.
There was Kennedy there was an Eisenhower there was a lot of money. So these guys had good cameras. They had Nikon Fs, and
Wow.
I just thought it would be cool. There was a yearbook and a school paper, and they had dark rooms and all that. So I guess it was the summer, and my grandmother. This is in Chicago, and we go to Marshall Fields, which was the store in Chicago back there, and before Macy's bought it. Right. It had places restaurants and everything like that. So we went to lunch. It was a very common thing. She lived on the east side. I lived up in north in Evanston. So we'd meet downtown, have lunch, and I just decided that they did have a camera counter because they had everything in there, and we went down to look at cameras somehow or other, I talked her into buying me one. So.
You just kept begging her and begging. Yeah. She broke down.
It's not my proudest moment. Not my proudest moment at all. But
is that your mother's father?
My maternal grandmother, Josephine Culleton.
All right.
Yes, bless her heart.
Yeah, bless her heart. The
Yeah.
woman helped to the world with great imagery.
Yeah.
Starting point. So, did you take to it well then?
Yeah, I did. I started as soon as I think this must have been my first summer out of Exeter. So when I went back, I started shooting immediately for the paper and for the yearbook. And, my first camera was a Kodak Motormatic 35F. It had a motor drive. Right. It had a wind-up motor drive. It was great. And
how many frames a second?
About 3, maybe.
Okay,
yeah.
I mean, we're shaking our head. That's pretty good.
Maybe two.
Okay,
but still, yeah.
That's legit. You're now almost like real.
Yeah.
When you get a motor drive on a camera back then, it says something about you.
Yeah, that was something, and then I as time went on, I wanted an interchangeable lens camera, so I got a Canon rangefinder camera, a Canon 5T. They were kind of like slightly the poor man's Leica. Not that they were that much cheaper, but they were. But this had a winder, a bottom handle winder, like the Leica Vit for Leica. So again, I could chunk that thing along at about 2 frames a second. So I really seriously started shooting with that. Shot football in high school.
Now, were there any classes, or is it just kind of like, here, Peter, here's some film?
Yeah,
come on back.
That was it. I learned from my peers, which I've done, I would say, my entire career. I've never taken a photography class. I've learned most everything I know from my peers. A lot of it from people who've helped me out. A lot of it from people who've assisted me. And so that's kind of the way it was. And I just started and kind of figured it out. And
how was your early style? Were you timid walking up to your subjects and kind of working a scene?
Yeah, I was a little timid.
When did that start to go away?
I don't think it ever really went away.
Last week.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, just over time, you start to get to the point where you're shooting in a studio or you're coming to their house, but you've got a couple of people with you and you've got this whole thing, and it sort of takes on a life of its own. And you're just you're the focal point, but it's the whole system around you kind of gives you a little bit of credibility.
Right. So you bring the camera with you to SC and you shoot there as well.
Yes, I think at that point I had moved on to a Pentax, everybody's first SLR, the Pentax,
the K1000 or whatever.
Yeah, something like that, or even before that. But that, and then I picked up somewhere I found, or maybe I was renting it, but a 450 millimeter f8 Soligar. That was my first telephoto, but I loved it. Now, back at that time, walking around campus with a camera was kind of like having a slide rule on your belt. It was not cool.
No.
It was not cool. So, I would use.
And why do you think that was? I mean, I understand. What do you?
I don't know. It just wasn't that popular at that point.
Because dads took photos.
Yeah.
Wives, mothers never really. So you're like this geeky old man if you got a camera.
Right. There weren't a lot of cool models, role models as cool photographers. So, so my theory, my personal theory is there was one point of change, and that was the movie Blow Up. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Yes.
But he was the coolest guy, driving a Rolls-Royce convertible around London, naked women rolling themselves up in his background paper and the whole deal. And I think in my mind, that's what made photography cool.
Because that's early 60s, right?
Yeah.
Mid-60s.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it foreign?
It was British, I think.
Yeah, okay.
But it was in English. It was
Yeah,
made
it was in English. He had an accent.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it had British actors.
Yep.
And Verushka, the model, was in it, and all sorts of stuff. And there was some vestige of a plot, but it was really just more showing off how cool it could be to be a photographer.
Because I'm thinking before that, what, Rear Window?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right? Like the photographers didn't get mainstay.
No.
So Jimmy's in a wheelchair the
Yeah,
whole
he's in a
time.
wheelchair,
Even though he's
shooting
got
out
one
his back window.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He's got the most beautiful woman in the
Right,
world, but
right.
still he looks like a geek in pajamas most of the time.
Exactly.
So it takes hot naked models rolling
Yeah,
around the paper
yeah.
for you to get credibility.
Yeah. I kind of think, but
Well, you know what? That's actually a pretty good, I guess, starting point for where photographers might have just been more understood.
yeah, or at least perceived as a little bit cooler.
Right. A little cooler.
Yeah.
So did you take any rowing photos?
I took some. I have always found rowing to be a really difficult sport to shoot. I mean, those boats are 66 feet long, and they're 1.5 feet wide, and they got these oars sticking out. It's like, I mean, I did one ad. I did an aerial. I did a helicopter shot, and that was the most satisfying shot. Whenever you were on the ground level, you're either cutting off the oars or everything is so small. There was never something I really enjoyed photographing.
Yeah, that boat is not much out of the water.
No,
It's really water.
About 6 inches.
Right. But I mean, you were one of them. Those guys have unbelievable bodies. To photograph, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
I did a photo shoot of the guys down at OCC at their boathouse.
Yeah, that's right. I've shot down there.
And all these guys walk up, and I'm only 5'7", so everybody feels tall to me. But these guys were athletes,
and they've gotten a lot bigger and a lot stronger over the years, so that your average guy is like 6'6" now, but the whole scene. I mean, there are a lot of, aside from the boats in the water, just carrying the boat down to the dock, putting it in, even the boathouses. I mean, even SC's boathouse, which was not the fanciest, but you've got all these wooden boats and you've got nice light. I mean, the boathouse at Phillips Exeter was amazing, but there are a lot of things you could photograph there that besides just the boats in the water, that made it kind of interesting visually.
We're going to jump ahead only because I just thought of this right now. Was there any time during your freelancing life, did you ever think like, I should look into shooting crew boats or paddles or anything for crew? Was that even something even came up?
Not really. No, I did that one ad. I think it was an insurance company ad, and we went up to Lake Kachuma.
Okay.
Got the UCSB crew.
Throw them in the boat.
And they're in the boat, and I'm in the chopper, and we just kind of
go into the light.
Yeah. Roll to the light. No, I don't even think we must have had a radio or some way to communicate, but I just remember the one thing I remember is that I was leaning out, shooting down. And then I looked and I saw that my seatbelt wasn't fastened anymore. So, and now there's a tip from John Zimmerman. John Zimmerman always said, first he said, if you're in a helicopter and it's going down, get rid of your cameras because they're going to fly up and hit you in the face.
Okay.
And the second thing he said, so the other thing is that take a little piece of gaffer's tape and tape it across the buckle of your seatbelt, because it's very easy when you're moving around with the cameras to just knock that loose, which is what I'd done.
Right.
So those are two tips from one of the greatest sports photographer who ever lived, John Zimmerman.
How high above the water were you?
I don't know. I mean, enough to fit an 8 in with maybe a 70 to 200. We were probably 1,000 feet.
Oh,
it would have hurt.
I was going to say, these guys look back and they see the photographer from 50 feet in the air fall.
Yeah.
1,000? Never mind. That's
no, we were not zooming in low. But
oh man! So your time at SC ends. What's your career? What are you thinking?
Good question. I'm thinking. Well, as I said, I applied. I sort of had this master's. I was basically, avoiding military service at that time. Didn't want to go to Vietnam, so I stayed in. And being young when I started, I could stay in school another year before I was even draft eligible.
Yeah, right.
So I stayed. Worked on this master's, and then, not knowing any better, I applied to other graduate schools. I applied to the London School of Economics because Mick Jagger went there.
Oh, so it's got to be good.
I didn't get in there. It's funny because I did get accepted. I got accepted at Penn, at Wharton, and at the University of British Columbia. And I just think, wow, there was a turning point in my life. If I'd gone to UBC instead of Philly, who knows where I'd be now. But I went to Philly. Didn't like it at all.
What didn't you like?
I like Philadelphia as a city now, but I didn't when I first. Okay. It was just a hardcore Eastern city.
You're
East
a
Coast
kid
city.
Perspective too. You're young, so everything's going to be different now.
Yeah. And the classwork, it was public administration. I went there honestly because they offered me a stipend.
Okay.
They offered me free tuition and some money. I thought this is a good deal, but it wasn't. So I bailed. And moved back here. Now, all this time, my parents were seeing me as a lawyer or an academic or something like that, and I wasn't sure what I was. So I moved back and I moved in with my girlfriend in Venice.
Now, are you an only child, or you got siblings?
I have one sister who's 6 years younger.
Okay, so they're looking at you as the boy, the golden boy of our family, carrying the name and mantle.
Standard bearer. Yes.
Go, Peter, go.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, nobody. So I moved to Venice and I just started shooting. Well, I go back to shooting for USC because still there were not a lot of people. I had been shooting for the athletic department, so I go back and I'm still working for them, doing sports.
When you were shooting for the athletic department, was it just football, basketball?
It was kind of mostly baseball because they had a real good baseball team back then.
They were winning a lot back then.
So and then I was picking up other work around USC. I was doing little brochures for different departments and things like that.
So your name was spreading.
A little bit. And basically, I did a lot of theater work. I did a lot of plays because actors always want to buy pictures.
Right.
They don't always want to pay you, but they want to buy the pictures. So I'm kind of doing this, but I'm shooting the football a lot. I am trying. This is like 72, maybe 71, 72. I am trying like hell to get into an NFL game. And I'm calling. I think it was Jerry Wilcox was the Rams guy, and Rick Smith was the Charger guy, and I'm calling them and I'm writing them, and they're like, they don't care. They don't know.
Right.
So
now, how like if we grade Peter Reed Miller in 1970, how was your work?
My football work was pretty good.
Was it?
Pretty damn good, yeah.
What was standing out? What was making you good in 1970?
I don't know. I think I just had a good handle on action. I had a good handle on football, and a lot of my shooting was in the Coliseum back when there was really a lot of incredible light there.
Okay.
So I had stuff that not a lot of people had.
Did you work the sidelines?
Yeah, worked the sidelines mainly. I think I started out with a 200 F4, and then my big move was a 180-2.8, that 180-2.8 Nikon, which was a sweet lens.
Right,
very sweet lens.
A lot of guys have said that was the gold standard for them to get them those images.
Yeah, and that was really, other than renting gear, I didn't really have a long lens until I got a Pentax 500 Takumar and had it cut for a Nikon, had it adapted for a Nikon. So I'm doing this at SC, and my stuff is like the game program. So I go as a fan to a Rams game with some friends. We buy the program. It's called Pro Magazine. I open the program. I look at the masthead. I see it's published in Los Angeles. NFL Creative Services used to have an office in Los Angeles. And I look at the masthead, and I see a name on the top, John Webush. And that Monday morning, I pick up the phone, and I dial the number, and I call. And the amazing thing is, John Webush answered his phone. No secretary, no answering machine, no nothing. He answered his phone. And I said, hi, I'm Peter Miller. I'd really like to shoot. He said, my wife's been taking a master's at USC. We go to the games. I've seen your work in the program. Sure, you can work for us. And there it was, as they say.
Just like that.
Just like
so,
that.
God forbid if John's a UCLA fan.
Yeah.
Right? And he's buying that program.
Yeah.
He doesn't know who you are when you make that call.
But people ask me about a career path. Did you work at a newspaper?
Right.
Did you assist? Never, neither, none, nor. I just made one phone call, got the right guy. And so I started shooting for them. And then I also did a lot of work for ABC because they were back then Wide World of Sports. Mm-hmm. But then I got, what was really keeping me going was doing the shows, doing sitcoms. I used to do Three's Company, Benson.
Do the still productions?
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Who did you call and make that introduction?
I think there was another photographer had a gig on a ABC like miniseries or something, and he needed a second shooter.
Okay.
And I came in and I met the people, and they said, "Yeah, you can do this too." And so the sitcoms were great. They would film them, they would shoot them. They were 3-camera shows, video cameras, and they would shoot them twice, like at 5 o'clock and at 8 o'clock. And they'd call 5 the dress rehearsal, but they'd have stuff to cut. So you'd go in at 5, you'd shoot it. You had blimps. Your cameras were in soundproof housings.
Right.
And you had to dodge. You had to stay out of everybody's way. You'd shoot at 5. You'd go to the commissary. You'd have some dinner. Go back. You'd shoot at 8. You were done like at 9. And you'd go drop the film off at the lab for ABC, and that was that. And you'd do a couple of those a week, and you're making a living.
Right, you're paying rent.
Plus something. Yeah, you're paying rent, but plus something on the weekend. And that was, but really those shows enabled me to go kind of full time.
Right. What other shows? Three's Company. What else?
Three's Company, Benson. What was Welcome Back?
Okay.
Welcome Back, Cotter. Soap, which is kind of a little known but much heralded show.
Right. But Billy Crystal, right?
Yeah.
Played an openly gay character on that, right?
Right.
First time ever.
Yeah. There are a lot of people who started. I see people, oh yeah, they were on Soap, Bob Mandan and but you know who was actually on it to begin with was Bob Segan, the pole vaulter. He was on as, I think, maybe Billy Crystal's
love interest. Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah. So it was, but it was kind of, and I got to know all these people. Soap, I went all the way through. I went to the from the very first episode to the wrap party. I did pretty much every show, and so you got to know everybody, and it was very, it was very relaxed. It was not stressful.
Did that blossom off into anything else, either doing work for them or?
I did some portrait shoots for ABC. But at that point, they were really taking things in-house and hiring staff people. I didn't want to do that. Plus...
Well, why not?
Because by that time, I was working for Sports Illustrated.
Okay. So this is later into the 70s.
Yeah.
Was there any thought, though, in those early times with ABC, like, oh, this could be a gig of a lifetime?
No. It was fine at the time, but it was not where I wanted to go.
Okay. So you had an idea, though, of trajectory where you wanted to go.
Yeah, Sports Illustrated.
Because a lot of times you get fed and you'll lose that bullseye.
Yeah.
You'll be like, I'll stay here. I can do this 9 to 5. This check comes in.
Right.
I'm out of the rain. I don't have to wear sunscreen.
Right.
So you had a bullseye on SI.
Pretty much, yeah.
So those things cover you. And now you're shooting some NFL games. How is that? Next level.
It was great. It was...
Because we had the Rams in town.
We had the Rams, we had the Chargers. I shot them both. I shot... Johnny Unitas played his last season with the Chargers. I shot him. Shot John Hadel at the Rams. And it was, it was what I'd wanted to do. And then they would even... NFL started traveling me a little bit. Not a lot, but like Denver. Do Denver. There were no Seahawks then, so there's no Seattle. But the Bay Area, that was my first, because they published, this pro magazine was the game program for all the teams. And then the teams would throw in an insert with the lineups and stuff like that. So basically, everything was fair game. And I remember going up to San Francisco to shoot the Niners-Vikings.
Okay.
Chuck Foreman was a rookie, and that was what they wanted, and that was my first pro magazine cover, which was like big thrill.
Wow. So how is your understanding of like composition, light, clean backgrounds? Like where is that coming to you? Is that you've gotten that through your times at SC and you're just carrying it over and you're getting better?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't think, I mean, I was not getting any feedback to speak of. Getting a little feedback from the SC, from the Sports Information Department, about what they wanted, and really no feedback from ABC. Just don't mess it up,
right.
You know. They really, I mean,
well, that was a well-lit studio,
yeah,
so
yeah,
you're an F8 at whatever. And
you were still,
you know what I'm saying, but
you're pretty much wide open, but you know, you're shooting, you'd have one black and white camera, one color camera.
Okay.
High-speed Ektachrome, the tungsten film.
That's right,
and then Tri-X. So, you know, but no, I was just kind of doing it, you know, and even
so it was that natural for you.
I guess, you know, I mean, I certainly.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic.
I mean, I look back and I see some stuff I did that I think was really great, and I see some other stuff that really wasn't.
Right.
But
now, maybe I'm wrong. I believe when I look at your early work, it looks very photojournalism driven. Like there's images that you took in those early days that are the ones that just light me up and get me all fired up.
I think it was. I think that was really my goal was photojournalism, but you know, still, I mean, and Sports Illustrated at that time was a lot more journalistic than it became.
Mm-hmm.
It became much more stylized. But yeah, I was, you know, into covering things, covering stories, whatever they were, and you know, I'm trying to think. I did a little bit of news. I did some news for Sigma, the French agency. Not a lot. I mean, I never worked for the Times, although I have a story about that. But so I'm shooting. You know, basically, I'm just getting to know the Sports Illustrated people by being at games.
And who are you meeting?
I'm meeting Walter. I'm meeting Johnny Iacono. I'm meeting Heinz,
okay,
who was a big influence. I remember the very first game I shot, the first NFL game I shot for them was Heinz and, boy, this is a guy, Marvin Newman.
Okay.
And, boy, they treated me like shit. I had to go up to, they had the credentials. I had to go with everybody at the time at SI State at the Beverly Hills Hotel. So I had to go up to the Beverly Hills Hotel and go down and they gave me the backlit side, of course, because you only got one side then. And so, you know, it was just, I was just starting out there. And ironically, another photographer in this area was starting out about the same time was Richard Maxson. And we were arch enemies. It's pretty funny because we're pretty close now. But and actually, the actual contract for SI was with George Long. Mm-hmm. With Long, it was Shady and Long back then. And I don't know how it all went down, but there was some, you know, stuff happened, politics happened. They didn't want George anymore, and they just decided that they'd hire these two young guys, give us contracts, Richard and I. And so there we were, you know.
Battling out for space and time.
I was talking to somebody the other night about this. When we would cover a baseball game, somebody'd get first, somebody'd get third. Mm-hmm. We would put remotes in the other person's well. So I'd be there shooting, there'd be Richard's remote next to me. I have one over there next to him. So that was how bad it was at the time.
But that is good to have that competitive
it was great.
Right?
It was great.
It drives you to stay focused.
And then it got even more intense when Andy Haight came along.
Right.
Who was a tremendous natural photographer, tremendous. And they threw him into the mix. And now Richard and I both had to work a lot harder.
How was seeing Andy at that time? How talented was he?
He was pretty damn talented. I remember the very first picture of his I saw was actually in the LA Times, who I guess he had freelanced for, and he shot, it was some kind of car picture, but he used the 500 f5 mirror, which nobody really actually used at that point. And it was like, wow, who did that? And I looked, I see Andy Haight, you know. And then he showed up, and he had the other big lens at that time was the 300 2.8 top core. That was the only 300 2.8 made. And of course, so you had to get a cut for a Nikon, and then it focused backwards.
Right.
So that was
That
mind
gets
over
goofy,
matter.
yeah.
But Andy showed up at a Dodger game with one, and it's like I thought the only people on the planet who owned those things were SI guys.
Right.
So Andy was serious. He was committed.
Wow.
And very talented.
Right.
And so the three of us were kind of
battling for space
in that pit. Yeah. But no, it all worked out, and we all ended up friends. And
Right.
so,
Yeah. So how was those first couple of years for you shooting for SI?
Nerve-wracking.
Right.
Scary.
Terrifying, right?
Yeah.
This isn't SC's, sports information
Yeah.
department where you make some black and white prints and they
Right.
make the program
Yeah.
next.
Yeah.
So
no.
what was your first assignment for SI?
I think I'm trying to remember this.
Or let's do this. How do you even make that contact?
Oh, this is another story. So I think I've met a number of people there, and at the time, the assistant managing editor, or maybe it was the assistant director of photography, is a man named Frank Agolia.
Mm-hmm.
So one summer, this had to be maybe 74, 75, and shooting for NFL, and actually they gave me some features. Also, I started doing feature stories for NFL, which was the first real features, and I remember I did Bobby Lane. I went to Lubbock, Texas, and hung out with Bobby Lane, the old Redskins quarterback,
Right.
and we went to the Glass Hat Barbecue, which if you read the Plimpton books, he's in there and everything. So, but I made this journey across country, and I did a couple of stories on the way for NFL, which kind of helped pay for it, and I drove. And I ended up staying with a friend in Philadelphia, and I drove down to New York, and I went to see Mr. Agoli. I made an appointment. I went up to see him, and I showed him my book, and he seemed impressed, and he said, well, we've got stuff coming up. We'll try and get you some assignments and everything. So I had not shot for the magazine at this point.
Right. You're just trying to get your face.
Yeah. So I go home. I drive back home a couple of weeks later, maybe a month later. I thought, well, I better follow up. So I call.
I know. Being that it's been a couple of weeks, he might have called you 2 days later,
Yeah.
and you're not home yet.
Yeah. And so I call the magazine. I ask for Frank Agolia, and there's kind of a pause, and then I get transferred, and then I get this woman. She said, "Did you know Mr. Agolia well?" He had died of a heart attack like a week after he saw me. He was not an older man. He was probably in his 40s.
Right.
And what they used to do, they would actually fly the transparencies to Chicago, where the magazine was printed at that time. And so, and Mr. Golia, Frank, literally died on the printing press. He died in Chicago. He'd flown the transparency. So there I was,
Oh, man, he must have really loved your book.
It was back. Yeah, really blew his mind. So I was kind of back to square one, but I kind of reached out to other people and sort of eventually.
You could have pulled the card. Well, he offered me 12 jobs.
Yeah, really. I want those jobs. But I think the very first thing I shot was an offshore powerboat race.
Oh, God.
Yeah, this is great, but they wouldn't let us go offshore. So basically, and it was out in Newport. It was out in Newport Harbor. So basically, you kind of putted out on this press boat, and you photographed the start. Boom, they went by. Probably an hour later, they came through. Boom, they came through. And probably another hour later, they came through and finished. And the guy... Rocky Aoki, who owned the Benihana steak chain, won the race. And I have a picture of him on his boat going like this. And that was it. It was kind of like, well, is this really it? But yeah, that was my first job for SI.
Wow. A boat race at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
They really made it easy for you.
Yeah. But that you couldn't really go out and follow. It wasn't like we were battling the high seas or anything.
Oh, my goodness.
We were sitting in the harbor. But,
So, how nerve-wracking, though?
Still very nerve-wracking. Very nerve-wracking.
Regardless, it's not...
and this was hard. If you'd actually been out there, you would have had a lot of opportunities. I probably would have been puking my guts out, but I had a lot of opportunities to shoot. This was like one and done.
Right.
He came through there, he waved his arms, and that was the picture.
Yeah, a
end
couple
of story.
rolls?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. So...
So it progresses from there. They
Yeah.
obviously were satisfied. You didn't blow it,
Yeah.
overexpose everything. And
No, I didn't blow it. That was the main thing in those early days, is just don't blow it, you know.
Right.
And I think in 1976, John Dominus was director of photography, and he offered Richard and I contracts that year. And it was still, I mean, I got to
did he call you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. He was very nice, gracious.
Do you
man.
remember that conversation? Were you silent on your end and he's doing all the talking?
Pretty
and
much.
Your heart's pounding and you're like, I can't believe he's still.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. No,
Did you feel you made it?
I never felt I made it. I mean, all I did, this is a joke among people who've known me a long time. Every year, I believed they were not going to give me another contract. Every year, I thought, this is it. They're not going to give me another one, you know. And this went on until finally I went on staff. And then it was like, you know, I was at least a lot more comfortable. So.
Where are mom and dad sitting at this point? Because you're not a doctor or a lawyer.
They don't. My dad, my mom is she's pretty accepting. My dad did not believe. Okay, back in that time, Sports Illustrated did not run photo credits with the pictures. They ran them in the back of the magazine
with the page number, right?
Yeah, in a little box. So, you know, my dad, I could say, yeah, I had a picture in Sports Illustrated. He'd look at the picture. He'd say, well, I don't see your name, you know. I said, finally it got to him that it was in the little box. I mean, he was not stupid, but he just didn't think so. I said, no, it's in the back. It says
because
back.
it's not natural. It's not with the photo.
Yeah, I don't know why they started. I don't know why they did that, but
I think that was kind of standard.
Maybe so. But it was a while, and at that point, I think there was still some thought. I mean, I'm pushing into my 30s, but there was still some thought that, I could still go to law school, or I could still, you know, but I woke up.
Peter's just playing. He'll come around.
Yeah. It's like, I'm on contract with Sports Illustrated. I'm traveling all over the country. I'm not going to law school.
Yeah.
You know, this is what I do.
Yeah. Not a chance, mom and dad.
Yeah.
I'm a photographer.
They were fine. Once they got to seeing the fact that I was making money and that I was getting recognition and all that, they were fine. There was never really a horrible rejection or anything like that, you know.
The artist. Yeah. Oh, God forbid.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think they were just happy that I was doing something that I was happy doing, and that I was making a living. And
you know, you weren't, you know,
coming
around going, I got $10. Can I live in the basement?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, your first, and this is a Super Bowl that's like people forget, is that Denver Cowboys Super Bowl in '78. That's your first Super Bowl you cover with SI.
Yes, and
people, I can hold a gun to people's heads. They couldn't name that quarterback for Denver.
I was wasn't Craig. It was Craig Morton.
Right.
Morton. I had already committed to NFL, and I was sitting in, I believe it's all long gone, the Hamlet Garden in Westwood, because their offices were right at the corner of Wilshire and Westwood, with John Webush, my patron saint there, and the other gentleman who really guided me, Dave Boss, who was a marvelously talented guy in so many ways. I'm sitting having lunch with them, and my pager, remember pagers?
Whoa.
My pager goes off, and I said, I better go take this. And it's Sports Illustrated telling me that they want me to do that Super Bowl. So I'm in a bind. I'm in a pickle. But
and that game's in Detroit, right?
No, that was in New Orleans.
New Orleans, because it was horrible light.
It was in the first game in the Superdome.
Okay, I knew it was somewhere first, and it was god awful.
And we had tried. I wasn't part of this, but they had tried earlier in the year to put strobes in for like the first 20 yards for a Tulane game. And the only thing notable is A, it didn't work very well. B, Heinz Klutmeyer got taken to jail. Or one of his many is what is this thing? 23 arrests, no convictions.
Yes,
That's Heinz's motto. But yeah, he got taken to jail at halftime for arguing with a cop or something like that. But they gave up on the strobing, and it was awful. I don't know what I think it was 300 2/8, and it was just push the film, but it was...
I mean, it looked dark on TV.
Yeah. Oh, and it was dark. I looked at the old stuff from there. There's very little that was usable. I think the one remarkable thing about that game was there were 7 fumbles, and we had to dig. They had to dig through everybody's stuff to find a picture. I had a couple of the fumbles, other people, and that was I think the only picture I got in from that was the fumble.
Right. It was just a god awful Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You kind of wonder how Denver got there. It was Roger. Was it Danny White or was it Roger Starbucks last year? It might have been Danny White.
I think it was Danny White.
Yeah, he was kind of always forgotten. He was a great quarterback in his own right. He was a running quarterback too.
Yeah.
People forget that. He was a dual threat kind of runner.
Yeah.
But he was following Roger, who was like
Mr.
Perfect.
You can't win in that situation. He was a good guy though. I think I did a cover of him up at Cal Lutheran when they used to train up there.
Right.
I did a just set up after practice kind of thing. Just some low. Didn't even light it. Just had good low sun.
Yeah, your 70s work, like I referred to, like so I wrote them down because the Steelers photo of Dwight White, when getting that hug and he's missing the tooth. It's in black and white. You put yourself in a spot where it looks like you're going to be the next one hugged. Like you're just
those were the days when you could do that. I mean, those were the days when you could kind of wander onto the bench. I mean, that game, because that was an AFC championship game
against Oakland.
The Raiders lost. I walked into the Raiders locker room.
Right, and you're shooting
pictures.
George Atkins, and you look like
naked,
you're next,
buck naked.
Yeah, you look like you're next to him, sitting down, crying as well.
I was kind of next to him, but it lasted about 2 minutes maybe, and people started going. But there was no TV. I mean, there was TV, but they didn't go busting in everywhere like they like they have ever since. But yeah, that was because that was a lot of that work was for a book called A Game of Passion that the NFL did. It was all black and white. It was myself and 4 or 5 other photographers. And the whole thing about that book was don't shoot the action, shoot the sideline, shoot whatever else is going on for a whole season. And that was a great education.
Was that fun?
Oh, yeah, it was.
It was great education.
Yeah.
What did you learn?
I just learned not to be so focused on the field, which I was. Before that, I was like, I was the young guy with the 600 millimeter lens, and I was going to get all the action and the heck with the rest. And I learned that there was a lot more. Unfortunately, as time's gone by, there's less. More has turned into less because you have so little. You can't shoot from behind the bench. The benches are now huge.
Jesus,
I think
they're massive.
I mean,
25 to 25.
Yeah. It takes me like 2 plays to get around now. No more running down the Coliseum track, and everybody says, "Look out! Here comes the horse."
Yeah, exactly. Get stampeded by a horse. I mean, but that's what I'm saying. That was such a photojournalism look that you were creating back then, in those early years in your style. I really loved it. There was a photo of Jack Dempsey of the Rams you shot at the Coliseum when they were there, and you're low and he's practicing. And if people don't know, Jack Dempsey had 1 foot. He was a club foot kicker, and you shot this, and it's practice, but you're low, and there's the holder, and the Rams have those beautiful colors, and of course.
Well, and that's the thing. Everybody pregame, you could go out on the field, if you were careful. I mean, now it's all what color vest you have, and there's some people who can, and the rest of us can't, and so it's
some dress up as team officials, and so they're in their like team colors.
Yeah.
It's such a show now.
Yeah. I just it's like there's so much stuff that these guys are doing now that they're, and to give them credit, it's really good work. But I do look at it and I say, wow, I did that about 30 years ago.
Right.
And so I don't get it. I mean, there's a lot of things I probably could do that I don't push to do anymore because I feel like I have done it and I don't really want to do it again,
I think a lot of it is, too, because I used to get those, Sports Illustrated used to put out the magazine, or they're not the magazine, the actual book, the NFL in Review, the book, and NFL had one. I'd get all those as a kid at the library, so I would study through it and just make all these notes. And they don't do that as much as anymore. So it's now social media where you see the work.
Yeah.
So when you were doing that work in the 70s, if you didn't get a book or the program, no one ever saw it.
Yeah.
Peter's work didn't exist to someone in Miami because they didn't get that program.
Yeah.
When you were making that stuff, did you realize how fortunate you were, or it was just so second nature to be able to shoot on the sideline, be next to the bench, get into the locker room?
It was kind of like, this is what I do. This is the way it should be,
Made your life easy.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly, as it gradually eroded, it started to it's kind of like, oh, okay, we can't do that anymore. Oh, we can't do
When
that
did you
anymore.
first notice things starting to peel away? The no.
I think probably maybe around 2000.
Oh,
maybe.
okay. So not the 80s or 90s,
No,
but later.
I think I was still pretty, because, see, I was still, I was Sports Illustrated.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was anything to get, I could get it, and so that I think prolonged my access past a lot of people's. But, eventually it kind of went away. And then,
Well, I remember when assisting you guys, if I would make a call somewhere and say, I'm with Sports Illustrated and we're so-and-so's, what do you need?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It opens
we'll
so
open the
many
gym.
doors.
We'll get you here.
Yeah.
We'll get you that.
Yeah.
I got an extension cord,
Yeah.
whatever you need. It was amazing to say those two words and what
Yeah.
doors were opened.
Exactly.
It's unbelievable. So through the 70s, you get all that work and you're starting to really make good stuff. How are the 80s for you? Because now gear is changing, right? Are you feeling that gear shift?
Well, I think we saw, it wasn't really changing that much. I think that it wasn't really till the 90s. We saw the EOS one in Seoul at the 88 Olympics.
Well, what gear are you using?
I was using Nikon back then.
Okay.
I'm all
But
Nikon.
you're all Nikon. So
Yeah.
you're what? 4, 6?
4, 6, 3, no zooms.
Right.
Zooms were no good back then, probably a 180.
So 180,
yeah,
35
or
or something?
Yeah, short
Or a
lenses.
50?
Yeah.
Because you were closer to the sideline even then.
Yeah,
You've
you
been pushed back further and further, but
Right.
probably in, 6 feet away?
Pretty much, yeah, I think. Yeah, I know. And nobody working in front of you. That was one of the big things. I think that happened probably in the early 90s, or when they just put the TV guys in front of us, and that was that with that.
Right.
And at
The
first,
2 lines, right?
the TV guys were not very nice about it. After a couple of years, it really worked out. First of all, we got to know that there was nothing we could do about it.
Right.
And secondly, most of them, with a few exceptions, got the kind of the feel for they're going to get what they have to get, but they're not going to, they're not going to deliberately block us.
And you start to know some of the guys too.
Yeah,
Right? If
yeah.
you're going down to San Diego or up to San
Yeah.
Francisco, it's,
You're
hey, Jim, hey, Gary.
seeing them every week.
Right.
Same faces.
So that helps. There's
Yeah.
a little bit of a
Yeah.
relationship there
Yeah.
where he's not going to be a jerk and plop his ass right down in front of
Right.
you.
Right.
'Cause that would be the miserable.
Yeah.
When you were traveling in those early days, how was that for you with all that gear?
It wasn't bad. I don't know. I used to have Halliburton cases, those
Okay.
big aluminum cases, and I had they're still out in the garage.
Because there wasn't lightware, Think Tank wasn't around, so
big metal cases.
Right,
I mean,
big
they were
metal-
aluminum. They weren't, but still, and
see
it
that
was-
we take that for granted now.
yeah.
Like, whoa, you go shipping, no, you put it in the lightware case or the Versaflex or whatever.
Well, they really weren't even rollers.
No,
We should carry everything.
your
up there.
your
I carried-
suitcase wasn't even a roller.
No. The suitcase wasn't, or anything you carried on.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't roll. And I think the first person I saw with a roller was Al Messerschmidt, and I thought, that's kind of silly, isn't it?
Oh, Al, you fool!
Al was smarter than all of us, dude. He really was. But
See, where was that entrepreneur in you then? You should have
Yeah.
said, light bulb. I'm putting wheels on everything.
wheels on everything, I could have done great. But
You could have retired from photography. So was that? How were the '80s for you then?
they were good. They were good.
You did the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, I did. Well, no, I did the Winter Olympics. Was that 8? Was that? I think that was 92. Was that?
You didn't do.
88, no.
You didn't do upstate New York. 80?
No. I've done one Winter
Yeah,
Olympics.
I know
Salt
you've
Lake
done
City.
one. So it was Salt
That's
Lake.
it.
Okay,
That's it. That's
yeah,
the
because
only
I know it's not your favorite. And
Well, I don't mind. I had a blast at Salt Lake. I had everything that I needed. I was dating a girl who ended up being the venue photo manager for ski jump.
Oh, well, that's
and she
nice.
knew, and that she knew a lot of the other people. She had friends who actually rented us their house, and the rest of us, I was staying in Salt Lake City in a Holiday Inn, but they were paying like, $200 a night, which was a lot back then. So I went to, I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Heinz. And I said, or maybe it wasn't Steve.
No.
But I said, look, I can get this house for $200 a night, and I'll be up in Park City. I'll be up where all the the snow events are, and they said, sure, fine. And so, there we were. My I had this great assistant. He was a med student, I think, and he was a former wrestler and a med student, and he had this great.
Who was it?
I can't remember. I never seen him again. But he had this great mentality of just, I can do it. Whatever it is, I can do it. And yeah, he'd pick me up, and we'd do something up there. You could do a couple of events a day, and then, then when the skating started, I'd drive down to Salt Lake every night, shoot the skating, and it was a good time.
That's great.
Was. Yeah.
How was getting away from football and shooting other sports for you in that 70s and 80s period? Did you like that? Getting some baseball, getting some track. You were doing Lakers, right? You did some really great early Lakers work.
Yeah, no, the Lakers were great. I mean, it was.
I mean, that's a quick drive for you when they were in England.
Yeah, it is. It's so sweet, And I'd be home because I used to park exactly by the parking lot entrance. I'd go out the tunnel. I'd be in my car. I'd be home like in time to see the game on the news.
Right.
It was like,
you can listen to Chick on the way home talk to you about the game.
Yeah, no, that was great. But it was great to shoot the Lakers during that period. I shot Magic Johnson from not his very first game, but his second game, which was in Anaheim Convention Center, which is a place you don't ever want to have to try and light.
Oh, I have. It's a pit.
Yeah. And
metal grates inside. It's god awful.
Yeah, so shot him all the way through and have done stories. I mean, Magic is a guy. I kind of judge the people I've shot by, do they remember me?
Okay.
And there are not many that do, honestly, because most of these people I saw for one day or an hour or 10 minutes in their life. But Magic is one who I think to this day he would come up and say, hey, Peter. I mean, I think the last time I saw him was that the Dodgers, when they had the new ownership and everything like that, he came up, gave me a hug, and he's always been great.
Well, we did that Matt Kemp and him in front of the A.
Right.
Yeah. Years ago.
Yeah.
When you started to shoot basketball and you had to shoot on lights, how was that transition for you?
Well, it wasn't the lights so much as the Hasselblads.
Okay, that too.
So I had a Hasselblad, and I started going to Laker games because I knew this was coming up.
Okay,
so I started going and shooting black and white available to get the feel for it.
And what was the Hasselblad for prior to that? Portraits?
Portraits. Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful camera, but it was basically portraits, and it focused backwards from the Nikons, so you had to go the whole thing.
Slow down, think about it.
Yeah. But by the time I actually got there on lights, it wasn't that. I mean, you want to jump it, and you do want to jump it, but you get that rhythm after a while, and you get the rhythm of the play. That's the thing. I mean, I see everybody now just motoring away, and I too. I mean, the last few games I went to, it was just motor away, kind of available, and Staples for the Lakers at least, it looks great because they keep that background dark.
Right, theater light.
But you think about the time when it was like, okay, he's coming, he's going up, he's gonna boom, and you shoot, and he's just coming down with the ball then.
Right.
And that was a challenge. That was very satisfying to get those pictures because there weren't that many, you had, maybe you'd shoot 6 rolls of 2 1/4 in a game, and it's like, no, but I haven't really gone through. I've been trying to go through the football mainly because that's my best market. But I mean, I got everything back from SI, or supposedly got everything back. I got everything that they think. So I've got it. That's why we can't go in my office.
It's just swollen.
It's all in bins, and then I've got a storage space with more bins. But
God.
But yeah,
the Forum was like that. The Boston Garden, Spectrum, all those places. When the guys lit it back then and people were smoking, there was that haze and that look. You can't get anything like that. The placement of where we would put the strobes, like the lights in the Forum, doesn't matter how you light Staples Center, whatever it's called now. It will never look the same. The lighting at the Forum was perfect.
Yes.
It went black. The fall off was beautiful. Yellow on one side, orange on another.
Right.
Perfect. And you get that little bit of cigarette haze.
Yeah.
It's something about that when you saw it. And when you guys shot it with the Hasselblad and it was wide, it was just a picture. It was beautiful. I mean, when you were shooting it, were you thinking, damn, this is good?
No, I was loving it. I was loving it.
Wow. mean, that's such. Okay, and you liked track. You shot a lot of track.
Yeah, I've always liked track.
Right. So what did you find interesting about track?
I mean, I think that, there was sort of so many different things. I mean, there was running, there was throwing, there was vaulting and jumping. There was all this stuff. Essentially, at most meets, unless it's some kind of championship that goes for 2 weeks, most meets, it's all going on at once. So it's kind of like like the Prefontaine. Prefontaine runs for an hour. It's made for TV. And in that hour, they run like 20 events. And if you don't have a script, really, you've got to look at it, you got to map it out, and you got to, okay, now I'm going to go here, now I'm going to go there. And then, of course, there's the unknowables, like how high is the pole vaulter going to go? When is he going to miss?
Right.
I remember doing, and this is a real specialty, indoor track.
Oh, yes.
Who just, I don't know if you ever know.
Sports arena, right?
Sports arena and the Forum. There used to be, at one point, there was San Diego Sports Arena.
That's right.
Sports arena and the Forum. And the promoter was Al Franken, who just passed away. But I remember being at a meet, I think it was at the sports arena, and Dwight Stones was jumping and jumping and jumping, and everything else was done. And he was still going, and it was like everybody in the place was just, that's all they were focused on was him. And he, I don't know if he set a record that night or indoor record.
But that bar just kept going up and up and up.
Yeah, there was no ending. So that's cool. I actually went up to the Prefontaine this year.
How was it?
It was.
I mean, obviously, it's different than your first trip.
Well, yeah, because I had done it many, many times over the years, and it was always this wonderful. I remember doing it when it was before it got on TV. It was run in the afternoon, and you have that Oregon where it stays light till 10 o'clock at night. In any case, that's how I remembered it all. What I didn't know until like 2 weeks before was that they leveled Hayward Field, and they built this all new.
You didn't know about that?
I saw it on the Olympic trials, I guess it was, or something. Or the Olympic trials, yeah. I went, oh, shit. But I'd already gotten the credential and couldn't really back out because it was kind of a favor. So, but it was not.
They nuked it and started from scratch.
And no photo positions at all.
None.
No thought to photographer. They had to give us the front row. Which was really kind of okay, but you couldn't get low. Right. Unless you put something remote down. But I mean, they could have put in a pit. They could have put in just a few things that would have made it so much better. So it was great to be shooting track, but it was not. You can't go home again. Things change.
Right. It doesn't matter how much they try. You can't make it the way it was.
Yeah,
it was beautiful.
Yeah.
A lot of guys would say that about old Mile High Stadium.
Loved it.
Right?
I got all that great light. That
Candlestick?
Yeah, same thing. Loved it.
Yeah.
Hate the new place.
Right. I remember you had when Canon and the NFL had a contest, and you had a photo of a monkey coming out of the stands, like an inflatable monkey was coming out of the stands, and it was lit, and you won like third place. I remember I had it cut out.
I don't even remember that.
In my locker, and I had it cut out because it was so like not NFL. It was some kind of parade.
Yeah, it was the NFL photo contest. They had it every year, and they had feature and action. Yeah. No, I used to judge that too.
And here's this like very newspaper photo that you would have gotten in a community, and everybody would have loved it, and it wins this beautiful contest. And I'm like, damn it, you've got to constantly up your game.
Yeah.
You can't just look for sacks, quarterbacks, interceptions and stuff. It's always thinking and looking around. Yeah, that was always the impressive part, that you were able to do that through your whole career and not get stuck in a period of time of like, I shoot this.
Yeah, a lot of that came from that year shooting for Game of Passion. I learned
that
a lot
growth.
About that. Yeah. But Mile High Stadium, there was like nothing else, and it was just, that's when especially even in the playoffs, because that was that one playoff game, that Cleveland Denver game. I made the Elway picture, which was a cover. I made a Bernie Kosar picture that SI just ran like last month. Something about how different quarterbacks throw differently.
Okay, Bernie had that sidearm.
Yeah. And
Three-quarter,
Brad
okay.
Magin spotted it, and he said, "Hey, I got it." And he said he shot it on his phone and sent it down to me. And it's that same light that was really only there for about 15, 20 minutes, right near the end, and then it was gone.
But it was beautiful.
It was beautiful. Yeah.
I remember my first trip and everybody telling me, it's going to be here, it's going to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, when's it coming? And it was gorgeous. It's everything I thought.
Of course, I almost died going up those steps to get out of there.
Were there any college early in your career, college football games you were doing? Because you were very NFL heavy, with the NFL. Outside of
I was
SC,
doing college almost every week.
Okay.
Did a lot of SC to start out with, but then, UCLA. I mean, I remember when USC, UCLA, and the Rams all played in the Coliseum, and it'd be like Friday night, Saturday night, and then Sunday afternoan.
Just
I would
banging
go
a-
through. Yeah.
Did you just rent a room in the press box and stay?
I should have. I was napping on the field in the morning. But.
Little one-man tent, God.
No, but no, college was always a lot of fun. I mean, I did all the big ones at one, but didn't really get deep. I did Florida and Florida State.
Okay.
I never shot a home game in Alabama, but
Did you go to Michigan, Ohio State?
oh yeah, Michigan, Ohio State, Oklahoma,
Texas, the Red.
Texas, yeah. Pretty much all those spots. The Cotton Bowl, when it used to be in the actual Cotton Bowl before they moved
State
it.
Fair, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever do Army Navy?
Never did Army Navy. Never did it.
That's the one thing I want to do.
Yeah.
I don't know who I got to find, but that's the one. It's just so beautiful.
Well, they move it around now.
Right.
Now
Philadelphia,
it's in
New York.
MetLife this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's big. And it's like, okay, great, that's wonderful. It's probably a good idea to do that, but I would have liked to do. Originally, they played it at Franklin Field in Philly. Mm-hmm. I'd have liked to have done it back there.
Right.
But no, I never did that.
Was there at any point any other photography you were maybe dabbling in other than commercial? Did you ever do like landscapes or astrophotography, or did you ever even have time for it?
No.
You were just knee deep in.
Yeah, I mean, I was developing as a portrait photographer and as a lighting photographer, which again, I had no instruction. I had an SI job, this woman archer out in San Bernardino, and it was going to be inside, and I went to, I don't know if you remember Balcar strobes.
Yes.
And the people who sold them, Jacqueline and Robin. Robin was the repairman. Jackie was kind of like the strobe earth mother, and so I went to them. I rented some stuff, and they basically told me what to do. And I put up a couple of umbrellas and made a really pretty horrible picture. But it was like my first shot at that. And then, as time went by, I started to learn it. And again, a lot of it I learned from other people. I had a lot of...
Who helped you out at the time?
Just,
Anybody? Just
well, not random. I mean, but people who are so long gone. I mean, I have a list of what I consider guys who assisted me and are now doing better than me. Like Andy Bernstein. Andy assisted me,
Mm-hmm.
Max Morris, who is now, something with the online learning thing.
Right.
Jeff Batari, who's got like 3 jobs in Vegas.
Right.
He does all sports all the time. All these guys who are like, yeah, I remember. I taught them everything they knew.
well, you're like the Walsh of the NFL. Like your tree.
You have my tree.
Yeah, your tree that falls off is unbelievable. You got your Holgren over here, and you got your Marinucci, and you've got this whole spread that's come through, and you've touched and helped out. It's unbelievable.
But for a time, and especially this was in the '80s, a lot of guys out of Arts Center, and they taught them lighting at Arts Center, and so I learned a lot from that. And the original, started using soft boxes because they were very new. That was a very 80s
Right. It was
kind
still
of a
very
thing.
thing. It was umbrellas were still like right.
Yeah, so started using soft boxes and bigger umbrellas and just, grid spots and all that stuff that I really, just kind of picked up. I never took, I don't say that out of pride. I just say it out of, that's a fact. That's the way it was.
That wasn't in your wheelhouse when you started.
Yeah. But as it turned out, in the second half of my career, I did a lot of portraits for the magazine, and I loved it.
Right.
Because I could kind of you go to a football game, they tell you where to park, they tell you where to go, they tell you and sometimes that's fine because all you have to think about is shooting. You're on a portrait gig, you're responsible for everything. You're responsible for the coffee creamer. I remember one time we had a big ad shoot. It was for Kodak, I guess, and big crew and everything, and we were sort of doing the catering ourselves, kind of. My girlfriend at the time, and we had to stop at a restaurant and buy like a quart of cream because there was nothing for the coffee, But those are all fun too. I really liked that balance. I didn't want to be a John Beaver who did action, action, action. I didn't want to be just a portrait guy. I wanted to do both, and I did.
Right. Yeah, it was interesting to watch if you split your career and look at the ability of you to adjust and pivot and actually move into adding light into your tool bag and use it. Were you able to have a conceptual idea and get it in front of your camera very easily with light and seeing I want it to be like?
Yeah, I would come in with ideas. There's a weird thing working at the magazine. I mean, for a long time, we had an art director who would never commit to anything. I'd call him up and I'd say, okay, we got to do this cover this week. What do you think? Well, I don't know, and he would literally sit there, and when the managing editor picked something, he said, yeah, that's the one. He was so frustrating, and he was there forever. I'm not even going to mention his name because I can't remember.
Just look it up in his mask.
Yeah, he was there forever. And then, unfortunately, as we kind of finished out, we had a managing editor who he was a good guy, but he believed that everything should be brightly lit and everyone should be smiling. And that was kind of the death. Those last years, I had a lot of stuff, a lot of covers and everything that I just look and I say, because at that point we're shooting everything on white because they're going to change the color anyway. So I have all this stuff of people on white smiling, lit pretty much the same, lit with a
even
big ass umbrella or something like that, and filled, so very little shadow
ratio of light, just even.
Yeah, and it's like, damn, I had all those people that I wish, and I did try and do when I could. I tried to do like my version as well, but you got to give them their version. Mm-hmm. You got to give them their version. Then if something else works out, as it does once in a long, long while, but otherwise, don't do your version. Say, here, I thought this was going to be better. They're going to say, well, where's ours?
Yes.
Oh, you don't have it? Oh, yeah.
Did you fight for assignments back then, trying to get your hands on boxing maybe, or do like the Hearns-Thomas fights or Hagler or Duran? Or
It was there wasn't much fighting to be done. It was pretty much decided.
Okay.
And
decided as in this person's going?
Yeah. There was very, very little that you could, and it all happened so fast. It happened on Monday morning. That was that. And then all of a sudden, you had the assignment, and it was very hard to back out and change. I could, if I wasn't doing anything and there was something like, many a time I just went to San Francisco because it was a day game and it was going to be San Francisco and it was going to be great light. And Steve Heinz, most of the directors of photography would send me, just go up, fly up there, spend a little money, rent a car, get an assistant, and see if you can make a picture.
Right.
See if you can make once that was something, leading off.
Yeah.
Once we started leading off, that was like there was
the leading off something.
Yeah.
Find me something.
Yeah.
Candlestick was easy for that. The team was great.
Yeah.
And Candlestick was gorgeous.
They wore red.
Yeah, they wore red. It stood out.
Yeah.
The division wasn't that bad,
No,
so that helped. If they were playing the Rams, you had
Yeah.
Dickerson or something like that. When you get through those 80s and gear, now we'll go back to gear. When was gear starting to change for you and you get into Canon?
Well, yeah, I kind of did too. I did a switch for Canon in the early 80s. It wasn't the EOS. It was the new F1, but they had a 400-2.8 and Nikon didn't.
Right. They changed the mount, right? Was that the whole mount switch?
Well, they changed the mount every week. I mean, there was like the F1, and then they changed the mount for the new F1, and of course they changed it again for the EOS, And now we're in the RF mount, but
you can't keep track.
I did a big switch. I think it was like in 81. I went over to Canon to get that 400-2.8. And, of course, got the rest of the stuff. But Canon had no 6. They had this horrible nightmare 6 with
the dial
and wheel focusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had an 8 like that, too, and neither one were very good. The 6 was 4.5. They had a 125th sync when the FMs were going 250th. And I remember I wrote this long letter to the president of Canon because I did the ad in 84, did the ad for Canon and the TV spot, the whole thing with he was a runner, some runner, but that was weird, because they didn't give me a motor drive. I was supposed to be shooting this click, 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 click. It was crazy, but that's TV, So I met this guy, this president. I wrote him this letter. I said, look, you need a faster sync speed. You need a good 600. You need all these things. I didn't really understand dealing with the Japanese then like I do now. They don't care.
Did you honestly think he was?
I thought I should try.
Now, was this North American Canon or
no,
this
was Canon
straight
to Japan. Yeah. And I gave it a shot, but
was anybody else right behind you complaining with pitchforks and
not really. There weren't that many Canon shooters out there.
Oh, so you're this rare unicorn
voice in the wilderness.
Yeah.
So
listen to me.
So the 84 Olympics come around. Nikon's now got a 400-2.8. I go back to Nikon briefly. And
how difficult was that back then, going back and forth, back and forth?
It was hard.
Because who'd you sell your stuff to? Because
I could always find people to buy my stuff. And when I went to Canon, there were guys at Canon. They didn't give me stuff. There was no Explorers of Light or anything, but they were very helpful in terms of expediting getting things and all that. But then I was at a football game, and it was after, so probably 85, and Walter Yost was there. And he says, come here, I want to show you something. And he gives me this EOS with this 600. And he says, here, just push the focus button. And I was like, bang. And I thought, and I switched back like literally in a matter of weeks. I was like, and there was a guy, Patrick Murphy Racy, I'm sure you've heard of him,
I know
who was running, he was running a business then because so many people were switching. He had this business called PhotoFax, and he would fax this was before the internet, with all this stuff. So he sold all my stuff for me. It was great. But yeah, I went back to Canada and never looked back, after that. But
Can you imagine that Patrick was doing that? Like he was like the middleman of getting people. What do you got? What do you got here?
Yeah.
You got a 400, you got a 300, you got a 35, you got a
He's a dealer. He's a wheeler dealer. He's a Chicago guy, and he can always make a deal.
You got to love that
Yeah.
he was doing that
Yeah.
when you needed. He was your eBay, your Craigslist.
Right. He saw it all. And so then I
So you jumped in. You're back.
Yeah, I was in Canon, and I was starting to really use the autofocus, and it was really working. And so through maybe the mid 90s, no one else at SI used Canon. I kicked ass. I outshot a lot of people who were actually better action shooters than I was, because I was shooting Canon autofocus.
Really?
And they were still shooting manual Nikons.
And it was giving you that little extra.
Yeah, it was giving me that little.
Where
extra.
was it? Was it you would swing from quarterback to receiver and hit the focus and be there?
Yeah, and it was also tight. Tight
Okay.
was always better with autofocus, So
Yeah,
you
right.
got a lot of tighter stuff that you maybe wouldn't, maybe manual. You'd maybe just miss the eyes or something like that.
But it would be acceptable.
Yeah.
Back then.
Yeah, I mean, I look at a lot of the old stuff now, and this stuff was published. This stuff for hand, but
You have to judge it in its time.
it's old stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was kind of my camera journey right there. And then in the 90s, they started up the Explorer Light program and put me in it. And so I've done a lot of work for them since then. And,
So you've really seen some unbelievable change, though.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
that early EOS system compared to now is just god-awful.
Well, I'm going to say this. The film EOS, that autofocus got really good. The EOS
At the end, it did.
1V,
The 1V, yes.
that thing, and it was years in the digital before they got back to that level with autofocus.
What was it that made that V?
I don't know. I don't know. They had finally perfected and everything, and then they went to digital, and it was like all new. We don't have the, the things that we can't bounce it off the film. I don't know what they were doing, but it was totally different. But they've really caught up, and now with the mirrorless, it's amazing. It's like they're very complicated, and it took me a long time to figure out the R3, but I did, and it works amazingly. It does a lot of things I don't even want it to do, like following the subject. You can't do that on a football field because there's a lot of subjects, and they're all dressed the same, and you can't follow faces because there's 26, 28 faces there, and guess what? Behind them are even more faces. So
theater, that's fantastic.
Yeah, track.
Football field, not so good.
Track, no, it was great on the track. And track, even soccer. But football, you have to really, my whole fight was, okay, dumbing it down. I mean, I had a lot of talks with Rudy Winston at Canon. I said, Rudy, I want this to work just like my last camera. He says, no, but it does all these wonderful things. I said, I know, I love it, but this is what I need for football.
Right, but the way I shoot and the way I needed to do this, and that's the problem. Sometimes those engineers don't see it that way.
No, I've had a number of conversations with the Canon engineers over the years. And
I'm sure you could write a book on that.
I don't know that any of them have had any significance whatsoever. It's kind of like they're over there, they're doing what they think the people want, and sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're not.
Sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah. But bless their hearts. I mean, and the whole the whole thing, with the competition with Sony now and even Nikon now, it's great because it keeps everybody pushing.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, we wouldn't have the cameras we did today if it was just
one company,
one
right.
company, or even two. I think Sony's really pushed everybody up.
Oh, Sony has made them put on their big boy pants and try.
Yeah.
Because they've been lazy.
Oh yeah, I think
that's why they got so far behind.
I think Canon especially was the mirrorless. They weren't doing anything. Although Canon has a saying that they don't necessarily want to be first; they want to be best.
Right.
So I give them that because they were not first with the digital SLR, a Pro Digital SLR. Nikon was out for a year or two before they, but they do all right when they get around to it.
Right. When was your first Olympics?
84.
How was that for you, being at home?
It was great. It was wonderful. It was like, first of all, it was the high point of all life in Los Angeles forever.
Isn't it weird that was, I was a kid and I thought, it can't get any better than this.
The freeways were empty. Everybody was friendly. Everybody,
Lionel Richie's album's out and everybody's dancing and it's great. It's 80s.
No, I loved it. And, I mean, I started out, this is kind of going back to what I said about, I didn't know that I was going to do it for SI for quite a while. And in the meantime, Con Keyes was director of photography at the LA Times. He taught photography over in Arizona.
Okay.
He was a mentor to McDonough and a number of people. And and he calls me in for an interview because he wants to hire me to shoot the Olympics for the Times. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll take that. And then he said, okay, just go down to HR and they'll get you all signed up. And I went down.
How unusual was that for them to reach outside of their department?
I think he was trying to cut us. He was just new there. He had not come up through the ranks. He was a journalism professor, photojournalism professor. And they brought him in, and I think he wanted to do some things that were out of the ordinary. And, I was at that time, I had a contract, but it didn't prohibit me from working for anybody else. But I went down to that human resources and all those lines and all those windows and all those things, and literally I walked out. That was it. I thought, no, this is not just going to be fun shooting the Olympics. This is a job. And I was like, I've made it this far without having a job. So, and then fortunately,
the whole job scared you.
Yeah. And fortunately, SI came along and asked me, and I was like, I mean, that Carl Lewis cover, that was a total, I was shooting boxing in the old sports arena. And I had this theory about Carl Lewis. He'd never practiced with the team. I thought he was going to drop the baton. So for that one relay.
Now, why did you have that thought?
I just seen reports that he was not practicing at all with the relay team.
Well, I forgot. What was the reason?
I don't, God knows why Carl did anything.
Right.
But in any case, he felt he didn't need to. I thought he's not going to handle that. Now, turns out I was like about 20 years too early for U.S. relay teams dropping batons, which they do with regularity now.
Yeah.
But so I left boxing.
Well, it's so easy to hold it, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to drop it. It's so passe.
So I knew what time the race was, and I split from boxing because boxing, they're wearing headgear. You're shooting from above.
Big pads, too. You don't see anything, yeah.
It was horrible. And so I walked across to the Coliseum and plopped down about midway through the final stretch, looking at the fourth turn. And here comes Carl, and he does not drop the baton. And he goes on to, U.S. wins the race. And I thought I had one roll of film. And I dropped it, because that's all he one pass. It's a 4x100 relay. It was like boom, boom, boom. That was it.
Now, what film were you shooting inside? You had to be, tungsten?
Well, see, that was the Fuji Olympics.
That's right.
That was the Fuji Olympics. So I think they had a 1600 neg. They at least had an 800 neg.
Okay.
I think I was shooting that. But
you were using their film. SI didn't say whatever we use.
Oh, no. SI said, you use whoever's giving us free film, you use it. and so I dropped it in the envelope. I sent it in. It was all being processed at Maxon's lab
right
at the time. And this was Saturday. Didn't think a thing about it. Monday morning, Barbara Hinkle, who was the director of photography at the time, calls me up, says, you got the cover. And I literally did say, of what? Because I literally did not think they were going to put boxing on the cover. And I couldn't, I hardly remembered making that shot.
In your head, are you starting to try to think, like, what did I shoot? What did I shoot?
I am. I literally am. She said, Carl Lewis from the relay. I was like, could have knocked me over with a feather. Yeah, I was totally shocked. And, it's funny, if you look at that picture, Ben Johnson's in the right behind him, later to become famous in his own right.
Right. Well, people don't realize, everybody thinks that 88 was their first time. No. They had been tied at the hip for a while.
Yeah. But so that was kind of, it was a great Olympics.
What else did you shoot that you found of interest?
I actually went up to wherever that was in around Oxnard and did shoot some crew because one of my friends was one of the officials. So I got on a slightly better boat than the rest of the media. But still, you're in this little runabout shooting these little long things. That wasn't much. Shot some gymnastics. That was fun. But again, really, it was in poly. And you really didn't have the speed. It was 200 F2s, and that was it, And I don't know, I think I did. That's really about the only track I did, because track was for the big guys. Track was for Manny and Heinz and all of them. But I enjoyed it anyway, just riding around. We all had these, because there were no cell phones, so we all had these radios hitched to some repeater up in the mountains, and everybody's calling each other and everything, and
your version of Navy SEAL Special Forces.
Yeah. And I remember the last day, I had one of the guys who was helping us out, James Perez, had a motorcycle, and we did the marathon. We did a ladder on Wilshire Boulevard, put up a ladder, shot some there, and then just left the ladder. Who cared? And rode around, hit a couple other spots. I think they came somehow through the marina, and then ended up on, what is it? Martin Luther King, right when they were coming in for the finish. And I shot that, and I thought, I could go to the closing ceremony. So at this point, in every Olympics, it starts out tight and ends up very loose. I didn't have, because the closing ceremony was ticketed, where you had to get, I didn't have a ticket, but I knew I could just walk down that tunnel and do that. And then I thought, nah, I just got on James's bike and had him take me home. And it was like, I'm done.
20 minutes to get home.
It was a feeling of immense satisfaction. Had I not gotten the cover, I would have still felt the same way.
Right. So were you walking around that second half of the Olympics as the guy that got the cover? Right?
No, this is the last. This is the very end. This is the last Olympic, the last one for the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's 2 covers possibility.
Yeah, really 3 if we jam one. I think we did because it was Rafer. Yeah, Ron Madra got Rafer from the opening ceremony, and then I think it was a swimming cover the second because Zimmerman was still shooting. He was shooting for us there, and they had that whole thing was like, I never shot any swimming. I shot some diving. I went up and shot some diving, but and then my Carl Lewis cover because that's when he'd won 4 goals.
Yeah, his 4.
Yeah.
How was it meeting Zimmerman?
John was great. He was the kindest, nicest man. I didn't spend a lot of time with him. There's one funny thing that I did a little work for this French agency, Sigma, and the Japanese emperor, prime minister, some big guy from Japan was coming to the U.S. It was a big, big deal, and John was supposed to shoot it for time, and they screwed up. They didn't get him a credential. So we're all sitting down in this press room the day before, and Tony Carodi, who was my contact at Sigma, he was the guy who got me the thing, and John's saying, "Well, I guess you're taking over for me now," but it's totally gracious. He didn't care, But no, we had several times he had us up for lunch at his house, the house with the tennis court, and some dinners, some free Super Bowl dinners we had and everything. No, he was the best. He really was.
Yeah, I never got to meet him, but he everything I hear, he was just
so
unbelievable.
Gracious and he was just, I don't know. He was a great guy.
That's nice.
Amazing.
So, Todd Marinovich, that 87 story, if you could have even thought about what that story then would have led to.
Well, now, we're talking the very first.
Capo Valley, high school.
The high school one.
Right.
With all those people in that room, and we had built all these little podiums for it, and then we for some reason.
So how does the story come to you?
Just that there's
because you knew Marv, right? At least of him. He played at SC.
Yeah, but I didn't really know him. I didn't really know him. It was just like, this guy is a real star. I think he's got this whole team of people who work with him. So let's shoot a picture of all of them. So then, hence the whole thing. And for some reason, we had to shoot with the lights out. I don't know. I think somebody had a screen.
Yes, there was a screen.
And so the lights are out. I'm up on a ladder. The strobes start to pump, and I'm kind of going, it makes you dizzy. It was like, whoa. But we did that, and it wasn't anything that I was terribly. It was one of those things that's just a lot of work. You get it done. You get them the shot, but it's nothing that you're really
right. It was also somebody else. It looks like somebody else's conceptual idea.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, they said just do them with all the people, and I kind of worked out how to get them all in there. But yeah. So then come around and I'm doing them at USC, and now I'm starting to get to know him, and I'm seeing things like I talk a lot with his mom, who was related to Craig Furtick.
Okay.
And she was like, she would come and sneak him away and bring him lunch, bring him sushi and stuff like that Marv wouldn't let him eat.
Right.
And so, I got to know him fairly well. I remember, it's funny, we're over in the Coliseum. We're doing a portrait in the Coliseum up in the Peristyle Inn, and there's a plaque that said, in 1960, John F. Kennedy accepted his. I was there for that. You were there? I was in junior high school, and they were bussing bodies down, and somebody, my mother, who was a staunch Republican her entire life, but somebody she knew said, well, if Peter wants to come, it's a bus ride and all that, wear a white shirt. And I was up on the top of the Coliseum and saw this little John Kennedy. But Todd and the couple of people who were with him who were his age looked at me like, damn, you must be old. But he was always great to work with, and I even reached out. Somehow or other, I still had his number after He'd left the Raiders. He'd been through all his troubles, and somehow or other I had a contact number for him. And I called him, and I said, listen, I'm SI, you remember me? He said, yeah, do you want to do a picture? He said, no, man, I don't really want to do it now. So I didn't get that last picture, which is a little disappointing because it would have been cool. But no, it was he was a unique guy. But you could see once you got the dynamics of his dad, his mom, it was not hard to figure out this was not going to end well.
You could see it.
Yeah, you could see it. I mean, my favorite picture from all those stories is after practice, he and his dad's like, they're leaning up against a car. I guess it was on the practice. They're leaning up against something on the practice field. It is literally lit by street lights. And his dad is like, telling him what he should have been doing and everything like that. And that's
at an SC football practice.
Yeah,
right.
After an SC football practice, yeah.
Who was coach? It wasn't Hackett. It was
I'm trying to remember.
Was Robinson? Or was
it
this?
Might have been. No, I don't think it was Robinson.
Robinson he came back from, but I think it was after that.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so talk about the image that we talked about earlier where he's on the phone. I think it's gorgeous. It's at the Coliseum, sun's going down, players are on the bench, he's lit, he's on a phone, he's got these huge giant knee pads and everything else, and you lit it. What were you thinking? It was just...
I used to take Norman 200Bs, man. My poor assistant used to drag him around.
Did you always bring it thinking you would try to make something?
I didn't always bring it, but for a while I did. I did. I even shot a little bit of, night football with it, like sit in the end zone and wait till they come at you, and made a picture.
Trying to make something different?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But
cross light or just trying to fill it?
Yeah,
or?
just kind of moving it. Yeah, just kind of a little off at an angle, not too, like I think Heinz did at the Orange Bowl.
Right, because you still had to be wired in, right?
No, we had radios.
Okay,
we had those
really bad radios.
Yeah, they were garage door openers.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, but they once in a while they worked, and there were the
spoken like a man who's been beaten once or twice by it not working.
Oh yeah. But there was one brand, and then Dynalite came out with one that still had a better receiver, but it was all very sketchy. But yeah, I did a lot of stuff in that period. I would have the assistant bring the lights and just. See what we could get, even when it was a bright day, to try, like Art Shell, What are you going to do? You got to light him.
Right.
In black with a black hat.
And he's a very dark-skinned man.
Yeah.
Right. You're like, come on, Art.
Yeah, you had to pump it in. So yeah, that was a great time. I mean, I've seen a couple of photographers do a little bit of that in the last couple of years. And again, it's kind of like, I did that, but it's still admirable, but I don't see anybody doing it now.
Oh no, it's so beautiful the way all the light. You could tell you've been to that stadium before. You knew where the sun was going to go. You could see the love of SC. You could see the understanding of football. You knew your subject. He didn't make eye contact with you in that shot. He was worried about what the quarterback coach or somebody was giving him an earful.
His head was in the game.
And you lit it so well.
And he was enough used to me that he didn't go, oh, what's that guy taking my picture for? He was like, I was like invisible to him.
Right.
Which was, I think, a big part of it.
Was what works. But if you really break down the detail of that photo, you get a time period because you can see the size of the knee pads that are huge. Yeah. They're bigger than his knees. The knee braces that look like you can hold up a small Volkswagen Beetle with.
Yeah.
The shoulder pads. Everything was so big in those late 80s, early 90s, where now it's all carbon fiber, a third the size. Everything's teeny.
Yeah.
So well done.
Well,
I loved it.
Thank you.
It was just one of those ones where when you shot it it's a cutout and go, okay, I got to try to do that. Damn, that's beautiful. It kind of throws me back to those photos where the quarterbacks always had what looked like water polo swimming jackets with the hoods.
The big part, the big capes.
Right, But then they also had this giant black phone, a telephone, and they're talking up to some guy up there named Hank or Stu, you know, and you're getting an earful yelled at. And then there's some boy who's shoveling hay on the side to keep them warm.
Right.
And you're like, what the hell's the guy with the hay doing? But that's what they used to do in Minnesota and in Chicago.
Yeah.
There was a hay boy.
Yeah.
Which is bonkers. Did you ever have games in really extremely brutal weather, like the fog game in Chicago?
I didn't do the fog game. It's funny, that came up the other day. But I did some games in Green Bay. I did some games in Green Bay, Philly, Cincinnati. Green Bay, probably the worst.
You were at that game, 49ers Green Bay up in the Bay Area for the playoffs. That was a deluge.
Yeah.
I think you guys had more canoes than you had, you know.
Oh yeah. It was a mud fest, and but you know, at Green Bay. I mean, there was one that was Giants. It was a championship game against the Giants, and my hand literally froze up. Wouldn't work. I had to put the autofocus on front button autofocus because I couldn't, for the whole first half, I couldn't hit the autofocus button.
Couldn't move your thumb.
No. And for some reason, it kind of loosened up in the second half, and, you know, I was okay. But it was like, because we had some kid editing on the spot, and he was like, kept sending out notes saying, what's wrong? What's the matter? You're not getting anything. And I was like, dude, I'm lucky to be holding the camera.
I don't have a right hand. How did the Dorsi High project come about?
I think that was offered. We were still in Barcelona.
Yeah, because it was 92.
Heinz is running things. I think he just brought back Steve as his deputy, and I think Steve offered it to me, and I thought, wow, that'll be something different, and it was cool. It was good. I mean, I liked the writer. Shelley was great, and spent a lot of time on that. I mean, that's when you could spend a lot of time.
Right.
On it,
how long do you think you spent?
Well, probably easily 10 shoot days.
Wow.
You know, over the course of maybe 6 weeks, 2 months.
Jesus.
And you know, I never felt that I got everything I could have gotten out of that. But
what were you trying to achieve? And then what didn't you
just get? More of the feel. I mean, and the thing was that the whole point of the story was Dorsi High School, the area is so bad that no one would come and play them. But they weren't that bad. They weren't a bunch of thugs. They were just kids.
Right. It wasn't them. It was the neighborhood.
Yeah, it was the neighborhood. And in the end, the very last thing I shot, the very last night, the game, I parked right by the coach's office, but I had left a couple things in the car, and it got gone. I had some, actually, because I shot that all with Leica, and I had some Leica lenses that I borrowed from Sammy's that I was testing out, so it was like a couple $1,000. But, you know, it's like, it's easy to feel too familiar. Like, oh, I'm okay. They all know me.
Right.
Well, the guy who broke into my car didn't know me. He didn't give a shit. So, but it was a fun story. And then there's an interesting corollary to, there's one picture from the game where two players are shaking hands. And it turns out the guy who we were kind of featuring was related to a big guy in the Bloods. And it was basically, it was a Crip school. And he was part of the Blood family. So the caption originally said, even on the football field, Bloods and Crips can shake hands. But we had a very fact-oriented assistant managing editor, and he insisted to say, even on the football field, Blood, parens, number 42, and Crip, parens, number 28, could shake hands. We were sued over that. The guy who was,
because he identified.
We called him out as a Blood. I mean, it's like everybody knew, but now it's in print. That's different. You can know it and not have to deal with it, but once it's in print, that's an insult. That's a threat, you know.
Or you could have marked him.
Yeah. But so that turned. I had to do a deposition and everything like that, and you know, it's kind of when I learned that if you're going to be a big time lawyer, you don't go to work for a media company, because they did a bunch of stuff. Our lawyers did a bunch of dumb stuff, and I finally, Heinz is in charge. I said, Heinz, this lawyer just gave out my home address to these gang guys who were suing us. He said, okay, hire your own lawyer. I'll pay for it. And I did, and it all worked out.
Right.
You know, I think they settled for not a whole lot, but it wasn't. Once I did the deposition, it was kind of out of my concern, and you know.
Why did you choose the Leicas?
I just wanted something that was a little less conspicuous, a little less noise. You know, I was shooting in classrooms.
Okay.
I was shooting, you know, in practice, just something, you know, and it was a little different. And I think there is something to how you see through a rangefinder camera that's different than how you see through a reflex camera. Not that it's better or worse, just it's a little different.
Way you see.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of go a little out of my comfort zone.
Right. It's very the images are very, again, photojournalistic. It's kind of goes back, you know, 15.
That's what I was aiming for.
Right, 15 years earlier, you're back with, you know, Dwight White on the field.
Yeah.
You know, because you did shoot it black and white, correct?
Yeah.
And there's the one image where they're playing and the light's beautiful and it's kind of a bit of a slower shutter speed, and it has this like Abercrombie Finch kind of commercial advertising feel that's not very SI.
I love that picture, and that I actually, for some reason, that was like the very first time we went down there, Shelley and I, and it was fall. It was before school started, and they were having a practice, and I think I shot that with a Hasselblad. It was just like they came by, and it reminded me of when I used to play football when I was a kid. And mostly I grew up in Evanston, north of Chicago, and we would play in alleys because there really weren't a lot of parks around. Not that we were poor, not that we were starving, but that was the best place to play. It just it made you really keep your kicks straight.
That's true. Yeah.
Because it was no fun to get on a garage roof. But
also everybody came out of their yards.
Yeah.
Go into the alley. You see, there's Jimmy, there's Kevin, there's Steve.
Yeah. And we, you know, so that feeling was that feeling that I had. And we were probably nobody wore shorts back then. We were all in long pants and the whole thing.
Right.
So
when you were doing that, did you get a bit of nostalgic kind of your
here and there? Yeah. You know,
because you're spending some time with high schoolers.
Right.
Now you're a male, older male at that point. White guy in a very, very black neighborhood.
Yeah. Standing out, but no, everybody that was the thing is we, you know, the editors, the writers, you know, well, not the writer because Shelley was very, you know, but the intent was to make them out to be real badasses, and they, by and large, were not.
They weren't. No,
they were just kids.
I know. I think Curtis Conway came from there.
Yeah.
88 or 89 or whatever. Yeah, we were in the same class. It's the area that's bad, not the kids typically in the school, because you're either out of school and in the gang by then. You're not normally in the gang going and playing football.
Right.
You just have a cousin or a pal. Yeah,
that was the whole thing. It was all kind of who was related to who and who was not, that they were actually, you know. Right. I mean, I think it's a little different now, but that's the way it was then. And
do you wish you had done a couple more of those kind of projects?
I would have liked to. You know, there have been sort of, kind of title changes and who gets what and who is thought of for what, and, you know.
Because from like Barbara to Heinz, totally different people, right?
Yeah, totally. And then from Heinz to Steve.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, I have this phrase, it's when your friend becomes your boss, you lose your friend and you get another asshat for your boss. So it's not really true. I mean, Steve and I remain friends, but it's definitely put our relationship on a different footing, which took me a while to realize that, you know, because we had been close since Steve had started at the magazine before he went to the New York Times.
Right, yeah, because he jumped back and forth twice. Yeah.
And it's like myself and Delaquani and Bill Uppridge, we educated Steve as to what the hell he was doing. He wanted to be a writer. He wanted to work at People. And they said, well, we don't have anything at People, but we have this opening as a junior photo editor at Sports Illustrated. He said, well, I'll give it a try, and here we are, 50 years later.
Right.
But no, and there were times when you were perceived as the first choice for things, and there were other times when you weren't.
Right.
Other people were, and that's kind of the way it went, And after all the time I was there, the 40 years, I came to see that,
Do you feel like you got pegged? Oh, the football guy.
I was definitely one of the football guys.
But would you have liked to just been Peter, the staff photographer, and I could do it all?
No, because I was definitely pegged as a lighting studio guy as well.
At the end.
Yeah, well,
or the last half.
Yeah, the last half. It just was like, are you getting the A plus assignments,
right, yeah.
or are you getting the A minus and the B assignments? And it kind
Because, as you know, there's stories to cover for an assignment, and there's go to a game and try to make a picture assignment.
Yeah.
You do a lot of those. It kind of gets old because you kind of want to work a story.
Right. You want to have a little purpose.
Right. Oh, we're doing a story on Randall Cunningham.
Yeah.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
He's going to be flying through the air, and it's going to be interesting. If you just go to make a picture up a candlestick again, okay, I'm going to at least see Z-Man.
Yeah, see Z. Max would be up there. Maybe we'll have lunch before or breakfast before the game, something like that. But yeah, but it never got old. It never, but it is, and this is kind of what I miss in what I do now with the AP is I'm going to say, yeah, you really, the perfect AP photographer gets an ISO full body action of every player on both teams. Mm-hmm. I never do that.
Right.
About the third quarter, I wake up and I go, oh, shit, I better get. So then I start shooting like like the whole defensive backfield in one play.
Verticals, the guys backpedaling.
Yeah, I know. That's what they want. So.
And isn't that just like, who wants that? But it sells, and you're just like, that's not a picture.
And I don't even think, I really have a theory that, honestly, because if you look at everything on the internet, almost all of it is horizontal.
Right.
It's 6x9,
mm-hmm.
and that we should be more aware of that or be made more aware. But that's a whole nother thing that's,
different
artistic,
levels.
creative, and political, so.
Right.
It is what it is. But.
How were those years in the 90s now for you? So now we're totally autofocus.
Yeah.
You've done some Olympics. You're on the top of your game. You're crushing it. All these things are happening. Magazine still has money. It's not detracting at all. Were you feeling now you're like at the peak of your power?
Yeah, I did. Peak implies that there's a downside. I didn't see the downside coming. I didn't see why this wasn't going to go on forever.
Or maybe like physically too. Like I'm not tired. I'm a boxer. I can still do these 15 rounds.
Yeah.
Because when you're 26 covering a game and you're 56 covering a game, the knees are crickly.
Yeah. No, but I did kind of, but again, I don't think you think about physically aging either really very much until it starts to happen.
Right. You knew every game. Nothing was going to surprise you.
Yeah. No, it was good. Those are good times,
So did you ever hear any knocks on the door or whispers about ESPN the magazine and them coming towards you and saying, hey, would you like to come over to us?
Never. I never knew anybody over there. And plus, once we saw it, we realized that it wasn't, there was, oh my God, you're going to have competition. It wasn't competition. It was something totally different. They used, I think it was, they didn't want to use people from Sports Illustrated. They were playing, at that point, there's so many photographers around, so many good photographers. And every art director, they want to strike their own mold. They want to make their own mark. And that's not going to be by hiring a bunch of guys who've already worked for Sports Magazine for 20 years. It's going to be by finding new talent or whatever you want to call it, or getting really experienced portrait guys who've never necessarily shot athletes, but having them shoot athletes.
Right.
So that never came up at all.
How was the moment when SI finally decided to put you guys on staff? No longer contracts and staff.
Well, they rewrote the contract. And they sent it out to us, and we wouldn't sign it. And there was about a month of silence, and then
What was
it was so restrictive. It was so restrictive. It was ridiculous. I mean, we'd had a pretty easygoing contract for years.
You could see a lawyer got his hands on this thing.
Yeah. Somebody said, but we need, we want all this. And it was like, no way. And so we were just all sitting there and kind of like, okay, who's going to blink first? And then Steve started calling us up and saying, yeah, you're going on staff. We're going to pay you this much. And
what year was that? Do you remember?
God, we were talking about this the other day, too.
90s, right?
Yeah, it's mid-90s.
95?
95, I think. That's a good guess.
Because a lot of people had to do that because the IRS, because LA Times had to do that. They had a bunch of guys down at OC in LA that were contractors.
Well, there were a couple of rulings. One was an SI intern, actually, about who's an employee and who's not. Mm-hmm. And then a couple in the media, like NBC or somewhere else, where they were using these interns as employees. I mean, if they tell you everything you're supposed to do, you're essentially an employee. So
right.
that was kind of what this contract. What this contract tried to do was protect them from that. Say, we're going to tell you what to do, but you're not an employee. No way are you an employee. You are not an employee. Don't even say it. And we said, but
you're an employee.
Yeah. And we kind of said, since you mentioned it, I think we are employees. We did, but there was no big push.
Did you feel like one, though, regardless of what that contract said?
Yeah. And I didn't get things like, I mean, at the time, I don't know, I guess I had health insurance. I had great, from my 84 Canon commercial, I had SAG health insurance for years. And so I didn't think about health insurance. I didn't think about benefits. I didn't think about 401ks or retirement or anything.
That never was in your...
Never crossed my mind. I mean, occasionally some tax guy would say, you may start putting away. I'll worry about that sometime. But
sure.
Not now. So then there we are with all this stuff. And, even this was the AOL days. We even had stock options. We had AOL stock,
We'll have an asterisk to explain that to people who are listening.
Yeah.
AOL is a...
Yeah, that was one of the worst. I mean, as smart as the people who wrote the magazine and ran the magazine were, the people who made those decisions all along, it was just a continuous, the Warner merger, the AOL merger, everything was just bump down the steps. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. And every time they got eaten alive.
Right. So becoming a staffer, though, did that help you?
Yeah, it was great. Right. Because
now it's a salary.
There was no competition.
No competition.
Even Bill Frakes was a good guy then.
Right. Well, that's a tough call.
I know.
But now you got benefits, your health insurance, whatever, you're taken care of.
And all of which was very good when we started, and of course diminished yearly.
Of course.
But vision insurance, all this.
Yeah, you're like, I get to go to an eye doctor.
Yeah. And somebody else pays for it.
Yeah.
So it was, it was pretty wonderful, And as I said, there was no competition. We worked together as a team, which is what we always should have done. But when it was about getting money for pictures, because you were day rate against space. So, it was about that $3,000 cover, who's, nobody's really helping anybody out.
Right. You're fighting for that $3,000.
Yeah. But now it's kind of like, we've all got egos and we all still want those covers and we want those big pictures, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't money. It wasn't life or death. It was just like, let's go out and do a job.
Do our job.
Yeah.
Get her done.
Yeah.
Because then a lot of that 90s, a lot of shifting of who was leaving on staff and who came in, Beck and VJ had come in and they were bringing people in to be solidified. That was a really strong, 15-year decade run of who was in the magazine. It was really good.
Yeah, it was.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you met VJ?
I think he was down in Anaheim. He was the Angels guy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he was I think he, typically at that time, you always kind of look to the team guy to give you, where can I be and what can I do kind of thing.
Where can I put up my remote to screw Maxon?
Yeah. We were past that by then, fortunately. But, no, it was, that was, he was always really nice and really helpful. And then, as time went on, you could see what a great shooter he was. And, so it was good. I mean, is anybody ever really welcome to begin with? No, not really. But once they get in there, if they're good people, they're fine. They're good, and that was good with VJ.
Right.
Yeah.
How was that transition to digital for you and the magazine? Because you guys were all late for a reason.
Yeah. We didn't have to.
Didn't have to, which was nice.
I could shoot a game in LA on a Sunday, and that film would be in New York Monday at 6 a.m. It would be processed by 8, be edited by 9, and it would be laid out by noon. You know, boom. So what do we need? The transition, the first thing they realized was digital looked better at night, even early digital. So the first mandate was, okay, take your film cameras when there's enough light and then when it gets dark, shoot your digital cameras. That didn't last long, you know. I mean, now you're taking like 7 cameras to a game. No, that didn't last long. And then we just kind of bobbled into it. We didn't do a very good job at first. I mean, there's a lot of stuff from the early years that'll never be found. You know, captioning was dreadful.
We didn't know.
Yeah.
Oh, white balance, what compression, what bit rate,
Yeah. And all that, but I mean, even more than that, just the workflow, you know.
Where to store.
Yeah. They didn't servers. I think the server from Athens Olympic got lost, and you know, that was all the raw files. You know, because we shot raw for everything. And then there were various...
Which was even rougher because that means it was very slow.
Slower.
Clunk.
Well, it was...
Cards were filling up.
The cannons were as fast, but you didn't get as much room in your buffer, and that was always a big issue. But there were any number of people who came through as sort of digital gurus, none of whom really knew half of what they professed to know. And so there was a lot of misdirection from that, not intentionally, but just because we didn't have one smart person who could tell us what the hell we needed to do.
Right.
And those people were out there, but we just didn't happen to upon them. So we had a bunch of, you know, and the last guy who was in there was, you know, really had very little knowledge. His brother was pretty smart. He would call his brother up in Sweden every night and talk to him about what he should be doing, but you know, it was, and we had this system that was developed for called Opus.
Oh God,
you remember Opus? Yeah. You know, and you would have it on a laptop, a dedicated laptop. So you know, you had to carry 2 laptops with you, and it would would send all the JPEGs, small JPEGs, because it sent them pretty fast, and then they could come back and retrieve the RAWs as long as it was online. It was in
you had
theory,
to go home, plug in your computer. And
in theory, it was a good system, but somewhere along the way, the people who were programming it all got fired, and it wasn't finished, and it never got finished. And so we're working with this broken piece of software, and it was, you know, it was really a challenge. I think finally they somehow moved up to photo mechanic, and they got it figured out, but it was years of kind of suffering. Yeah.
You have the look of a man who had to deal with that SOB machine.
Yeah.
It was brutal. It was a giant, thick Dell, and I just remember having to deal with it. It was god awful.
Yeah.
You'd get home, have to plug it in, leave it on.
Right.
Then you would hear it kick up, and they're downloading all the raw files.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was work. It was like we were used to throwing our film in an envelope, taking it to the airport, and seeing it go, and that was it.
Bye.
Yeah, and now we had to work more. We worked more at digital than we did at film, you know, so that was no fun.
What made you think that it would be a great idea to start painting athletes and taking pictures of them?
That's that goes back for so that was for the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, but we go back a year to 99, and I think Steve and I and Adam Stoltman, who worked at the magazine for a while, kind of came up with, let's try painting this. We were doing Maurice Green. He was clearly going to be an Olympian, probably a gold medalist, and so let's paint him gold. So falls to me to do this, and and so I hire a stylist for she's like $750 a half day, and we go out and we paint him gold and we make some pictures, but it's in his.
Did you do any test shots to figure out, does this work, or did you just say
He was the test. I mean, it was basically, it was it was what it was. It was very easy to light and shoot because, but we did it. He kind of had a pond in his backyard. We did some stuff in his backyard and some cool poses, and we did it. And I think they ran something, but it kind of lay fallow. And then now we
Did you like the idea?
Not really.
Okay.
Because it was one of those things where I didn't really contribute much to the process,
Okay.
It was about them being gold. I mean, I was happy to take credit for it, but I mean, really, what was I doing in there? Very, very little.
Right.
Very little. But so we roll around to early 2000. We're looking for something for the Olympic preview, and first person we shot was Inger Miller, the female sprinter. Mm-hmm. And we actually had her run. We painted her gold, made her run over at UCLA. And I have all this like 35 millimeter of her zooming around the track and everything. And it was like, this may work, it may not. But now.
Was that safe to be sweating and running in that paint?
Oh, no.
I mean, she didn't die on you.
Yeah, they didn't die on us, I mean, we didn't have to leave a strip in the back or anything like that. But so again, we used the stylist. Again, she charges us $750 plus agency fee. It's $1,000.
Right.
So now they're putting together a list of people they want to shoot. And these people are all over the place. And first of all, I don't like this woman very much. And secondly, I don't see any way we can afford to travel with her. Meanwhile, Callie's sister, I didn't know Callie at the time, but I knew her sister, Perry. Perry has come out on the shoot because she's kind of, at that time she was married and she didn't really have a job. She didn't really have much to do. So she came out on the shoot. She goes, after it's all said and done, she goes through the trash and finds the bottle of gold paint because she's got an airbrush. And she says, I can do this. And I'll do it for $250 a day. Hired.
Done.
So off we went, Perry and I had a female assistant named Sky, and the three of us. Now, there was an Australian triathlete, a Chinese diver, and a Belarusian gymnast. And I said, girls, get your passports because we're going to go. I thought my plan was to go Australia, China, Belarus, back, go around the world. Well, the Australian was training in La Jolla. The Chinese diver was diving in a competition in Miami. So the only foreign trip we got was Belarus, which is high on the list of places that you never want to go. It was, literally Belarus in the 2000 was like Russia the first time I went, like East Germany, in which was 88, I guess. Really, we were followed. That's all weird. And they couldn't figure out, it was this guy and two women. What was that deal about, And, of course, I brought in a bunch of currency and almost got, at the airport, they were searching everything and almost got busted. Somehow or other, we avoided that. But in any case, the whole thing was, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And some of the pictures I really liked, But it was wretched excess. They want to do this wrestler. And so we said, we got to have a mat. So a real wrestling mat is a very complicated thing.
Yeah.
And so we contacted
big, heavy,
the company. We had a whole mat shipped out. They sent out two guys to put it together for us. This is a big boondoggle, but this probably cost us $20,000. We didn't use the picture. We shot another wrestler in somewhere in Pennsylvania. But yeah, the whole thing, it's just a lot of fun. It just became, the whole thing was about logistics, about getting us there, getting us set up, getting us everything. And then you put up some lights, but you didn't have to do a whole lot. They lit right up beautifully.
Right. They look good.
And so the big conclusion, the grand finale, was supposed to be Marion Jones for the cover. So I rent the big-ass studio at 5th and Sunset over in West L.A., the biggest one. And
just because.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh,
yeah. And it's like, they said, well, she likes Jamaican food. So we have this enormous spread of Jamaican food. Now, SI has sent a video crew to shoot me shooting her. And they have assigned another photographer to shoot me shooting her. Now, this is the day after the track and field, the Olympic trials had finished. she comes in. She's tired. She's pissed off. She's supposed to do Jay Leno show that night. I think she's nervous. She doesn't want to do anything. I mean, first of all, at that time, I don't know if you recall, they ran in those suits.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, we put her in the suit. We spray that gold. Put her in the suit. Well, the suits weren't skin tight. So her standing still in this, she looked like an angry, sad alien.
Yeah,
so
it's all flimsy and yeah.
Off with the suit. We had these 2 pieces of 4x8 plywood with track surface that we'd had made for another shoot. $5,000 worth, by the way.
Of course.
And so we had that set up. We had blocks. We had her do this stuff. But, boy, there was just, when you, I mean, I know when I've got it, and I know when it's just going down. I just felt it slipping away.
You knew it was over. It was just not happening.
Yeah, it was not happening. And it was
her emotion, her physical
nothing.
presence.
She was,
And
she was a woman who didn't, unless she really was happy, her natural state was sort of kind of bland and worse. And she was that way completely. And so, boom.
Sprinters are almost natural divas, and the women.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and she just was not into this. She had just done too much at that point. I mean, it was right, she was
exhausted.
A couple of months before the Olympics, but she just won the trials and all that. She was tired, and so I knew. I didn't even have to look at the film to know that we didn't have anything. And I told Steve, and they looked at the film, and they said, "You're right, you don't." and you think back on those things, and you think, what could I have done? Maybe there was a shot I could have tried. I don't know, but I didn't, and it didn't. So then, okay, so I'll take my licks. So they sent Walter Yost to shoot her. Guess what? He didn't have any better luck. He didn't have good luck with her. And by now, cracks were starting to emerge. This was like when her husband was starting to get in trouble. I think they knew what was happening. I mean, that came out right after she won, but I think there was a lot of unhappiness in that family. So in the end, they ended up using Ivan Ivanov, the Belarusian gymnast, who nobody's ever heard of, but it was a classic picture. It was a great picture just because he's all muscles. He's doing the Iron Cross. I mean, he was the only nice person. We met 2 nice people in Belarus, him and our interpreter, who was named Natasha, appropriately enough.
Of course, mandatory.
So that's that whole thing. And in the end, because I was crushed, we worked on this for months, and I thought, well, I'm not going to get the cover. Walter's going to get the cover again.
Yeah.
That.
How many does he need?
Yeah. And then when it all came around, it was like, oh, okay, I can live with this. Yeah.
She's just miserable. It wasn't me.
Yeah. We didn't even run anything on her. And it was funny because I had shot her when she was in high school.
Right. Yeah.
I kind of tried to remind her of that. Usually that will get some rapport. Mm-hmm. There was no rapport. No rapport was going to happen. No Jamaican food was eaten. But, somehow there's a video of this horrible disaster.
It's a slow train wreck.
Yeah. And that it was. And, but, it's sort of all's well that ends well.
Right. Now, I've been on shoots with you. I've assisted you when you have to deal with subjects. The Matt Barkley one where we shot through the plexiglass and made stuff. Right? That was fun. That was. How was your rapport? Where did you kind of do your process to get a rapport with a subject where maybe you've only known them for 10 minutes?
It's I don't have a conscious process. I mean, I sort of. It's kind of like everybody's different, and I don't like I said, I don't consciously work at getting a rapport. I mean, a lot of times I'm self-deprecating. I'm like sort of bumbling and that, and it's different with everybody. But there's nothing that I can really say. Any previous experience is always something to latch on to, but other than that, it's just kind of whatever happens. Got to get music going. Get some music going. If it's any time after workout, you got to have food. Because we would do this. We'd take guys, we'd grab them right after practice and try and shoot them. And after a while, I realized these guys are hungry. Feed them and then shoot them. They were much happier then.
Right. They've been practicing for 3 hours. Now they want to jump around for me.
Yeah. And then as later on, we would have both Callie and Perry would both be stylists if we had more than one person. So they were both very good at putting people at ease. They were a big help.
Right.
And
naturally with women, it's all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And when you do have hair and makeup.
And they're kind of sexy moms.
Right.
Both of them. So, so they kind of like, they did that one. We did those USC linebackers, and they're all, naked of chests and everything like that. And they did, who else did we do? Brandon, somebody who was supposed to be a big star at USC. He was one of the first players to come out of high school early so they could be in spring practice.
Right.
And they got to oil him all down. He was a big stud, but, soon to be injured. A really nice guy, but never made a dent in football at all. But I think it was just a combination. And a lot of it was the crew, too. Sometimes I'm not, as a 50-year-old man, I may have a rapport with a 16-year-old skateboarder, but Max might, or somebody else I have might, or I didn't care. I was shameless. I didn't care who makes them happy. Just make them happy.
Make them happy.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we were doing that one with Matt, you're like in this cloth tube, right? So there's no light coming into you, so you're basically talking like, like he's not going to hear you. So my job was just to communicate you to him, do this, do that, and plus he thought it was going to be the greatest thing ever.
Well, the uniqueness of it was he I think he really got into that, which people either did or they didn't, and that's the other thing. If you've got sometimes these offbeat ideas, if the player or the subject takes to them, you're golden.
Right.
If they don't, Joe.
Like when you paint Jason Kidd and you say, now it's been done a couple of times, right?
Oh, well, that was scary because I thought, we had all these amateur athletes like from around the world. And then they said, now you're going to do an NBA player because we've got the dream team. I thought, oh, this is going to be a disaster. Some big egotistical guy. Jason Kidd could not have been nicer, could not have given us more time, was really, now I know he's had some issues throughout his life, but the times I shot him again, just a solo portrait before our son's game, and he was like 20 minutes late. He missed all the warm-ups, and he still took 5 minutes to pose for me.
Wow.
He's in my all-time Hall of Fame as subjects. But
that's all you want.
Yeah, and he was great. Couldn't have been better. And sometimes you get lucky like that.
Right. You got Dwight Howard and Steve Nash.
Steve Nash, that was
right. Those two goofy clowns, they can give you something.
Well, that was one where it was my idea. It's one of the few times because the magazine wanted that same silly shot looking up at him like we just done with the guy from the Clippers. We just done the year before, and we did that. And that's why we had to do it in the lobby of the hotel because we couldn't get the conference room ceiling
high enough, right? Yeah.
And then at the end, it's just, hey, do you guys know I love LA? And they started singing and goofing around, and it's like, okay. We'll take it.
We'll make it work.
And I just sent that in with the rest. They said, oh, no, that was great. That was great.
Now, obviously, you have a soft spot for SC, being that, you went there and your alumni and your football. How was it those years covering that great Pete Carroll run?
It was great till the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. But that was a great ending to whether you like it or not. It was a great
terrible ending.
It was a great. Did you get the picture though of Vince?
I got some stuff of Vince.
Okay,
I got some stuff of Vince, but I was.
But that was a hell of a run. Those 2 or 3 years,
yeah.
Even with Carson.
But they were arrogant. SC deserved to lose that game.
Yeah.
I mean, when they tried to lateral on the first kickoff, it was like, you guys, you're not going to win. They were laughing. That team had become excessively arrogant, and that was their downfall.
But didn't I guess we do that because we were making them out to be the pro team in town because the Rams and the Raiders weren't here yet.
The
Chargers
free games, the number of people on the sidelines, all the
you got Snoop Dogg and Will Ferrell standing beside you, and
Eminem pounding out, and they believed all. Yeah, it's not their fault per se as players or as kids, which they were.
Yeah, how would you and I have been at 20 if the whole world was telling you you're the best thing since sliced bread?
Yeah. Yeah.
They were on TV shows, and ESPN came to L.A., made a studio here. I mean, you had how many times did you shoot Matt and Reggie?
Oh, God. Many, many times.
Yeah. I mean, there was a window there of 24 months where it was.
Oh, no, it was Fat City. I mean, we made
you were going.
lot.
You were going everywhere with them.
I still have one of Matt's shirts we bought for him for a shoot, and then he didn't want it. So
Right, you did the Orange Bowl, right? You went
Yeah,
out there and shot. You were covering all
and
that
a
stuff.
broken ankle.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh God, yes.
That was amazing.
But that was an unbelievable run. Some great images were made.
It was great. It was, but it's funny how, and I say this with love. Once those guys, like the three guys in the backfield, Leinart, Bush, and White, once they went their separate ways, none of them ever achieved greatness in the NFL, really.
Did that surprise you?
I guess not. Thinking back on it, at the time, I thought they were all great. Yeah, Leinart's great, but he's great because he's got Reggie Bush running the ball right behind him. And White's great because he's an alternative. They're looking for Bush. As I was looking for White on that picture of Bush. But the last thing I'm going to say, and I'm drawing a blank, the Matthew McConaughey.
Right.
Now, I love him as an actor, but I despise him as a person because he was on the sidelines of that game, and he is a Longhorn, and he was rooting for them, and it's like every time I see him, I say, you
They brought the goddamn steer out.
Yeah. No, it's and I have to say that I never shot Vince Young, but I've heard some horror stories about people who did.
Yeah. I mean,
I heard he wasn't very nice to him, but that's another thing. But yeah, it was an amazing time. It was funny. There was a ESPN cameraman. I mean, I covered every game.
Yeah,
every one, the road games and everything. Even I made Steve send me to Notre Dame, and the ESPN
the push,
the Bush,
right.
yeah. And this ESPN guy, we'd always see each other in the airport. We'd always fist bump. We did not fist bump before that Rose Bowl, and I consider that probably the
snap of the
yeah broke the streak. But,
oh man,
no, that was fun.
Well, let's talk about what you're doing now. Right, we got some workshops you're trying to work on.
Yeah, getting ready to go with a couple of workshops. I think one up in Oregon and
next year, right? We're talking 20.
Well, spring. I'm going to try and get one in the spring.
Yeah,
and then roll into the fall. Probably Oregon, maybe Vegas again.
Right, that was fun with Jeff.
Yeah. That was great. Vegas is great, and I'm just basically going to the places that Oregon's new, but when I was up for the Prefontaine, I met a couple people up there who were like very receptive. And Eugene's a great town. I love it. It's a great place to just have something, and there's a lot of hotel space if it's not game weekend, and a lot of things that go right for that. So as I said, it is totally my bad that I haven't gotten this thing in gear, but it just something comes up every week. I've got a project for Canon coming up now that I can't talk about, but it's new and wonderful. And
you did have a pandemic kind of put the brakes on certain things.
That kind of killed things, but I didn't get back and running as fast as I probably should have, but nevertheless, I got that coming up, and as I said, I'm working on a project for Canon. And
where can they find the info on the workshop?
They will be able to find it on my website when I put it up there. Also, I have a mailing list of about 1,300 people that I'm gonna hit up, and I'll put something on Instagram, and so I'll try and spread the word, and we'll get the word around as best we can. And
give a quick description of how you kind of work your workshops. What do you kind of?
Okay, they're based on shooting, editing, critiquing.
Okay.
So we shoot every day. We shoot sometimes all day. We got one or two events, whatever we can get. Mm-hmm. They edit at night. The next morning, they turn in their 10 pictures, which I always say, give me your best, but give me some that didn't work out. Okay. No one ever gives me those. But in any case.
But those are the teaching moments.
Yes, I know. But sometimes they will. In any case, and then we do a critique. And that's my main. I mean, I'll do a little bit of a lecture, but I'm not a lecturer. I'm not, I have some handouts I'll pass out. Fortunately, I've I've had Steve with me for most of the last couple of years of workshops. So
Good.
You know, he gets going on the critique. He loves doing that too. And, you know, everyone's different. Whatever. I like to bring somebody in, somebody local, you know.
Like Jeff when you were in Vegas.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And I used to bring in the team guy at Tennessee, and you know, just somebody who can give another perspective. You know,
and knows the area too,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. We had Garrett Elwood one time in Denver, and so it's you know, and then hopefully we'll find something. Usually, I've had a lot of luck lately with CrossFit gyms, and we'll shoot some, but we'll set up portraits there. We'll set up lit portraits. So and you know, I found that some people are fascinated by that. And some people couldn't care less. So I try and it's not like we're in a studio, here's the subject, that's all there is to do. Like, here's all these guys doing all this crazy stuff, these men and women. So go shoot them. If you don't want to see me make a portrait, you don't have to.
Right.
You know?
Watch someone throw some kettlebells around.
Yeah.
Make a picture.
Yeah. So that's really the main thing. And I think the critique is number one in terms of how I can get people to I can make points off people's work and hopefully get them to improve.
Are you enjoying that aspect now?
I love it.
Yeah. It's nice kind of giving back, showing people,
Yeah.
watching that growth pretty quickly in those first couple of days of just.
That's really the thing, because there was back in they still do them, but I mean, when Rich Clarkson used to do his workshops in Denver, he would bring people in, he would cycle us in, and so I would be there for a day and a half, and I would see a lot of people's books, but I would never get to see any growth.
Right, their work.
So I'd rather rather than seeing a bunch of people, I'd rather have my 15, 20 people and watch them over the week and see who gets better and you know.
Right. Some people get a little, some people get a lot. Yeah. And that's what's amazing. I think that's the way you're doing it is really the kind of the best way. Shoot, get out there, work with them, critique it, and then let everybody see it. So everybody gets an idea of like, oh, I had no idea.
That's why it never worked. It would never work on Zoom.
Oh, no.
I mean, a lot of people were able to do Zoom things and bless their hearts, but this was because what are they going to do? All go out to different things and shoot, and then we're going to try and critique them. It's like, nah.
No.
You know, I looked into it, and I thought about it a lot, but it just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, no, you need everybody to shoot the same game. Yeah. So then the perspective is, oh, I had no idea. I didn't see that background, the lighting.
And I'm there with them, and
right.
I'm circulating, and at least I'll have Greg Cooper, who works with me usually, and maybe Steve, and we'll be circulating, saying, okay, how's it going? What do you now? How about maybe if you shot over there, you wouldn't have that light pole in the background and things like that. You know, so that's
porta potties and trash cans. You don't need them.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough. I've had a great time.
Oh, this has been fun.
This is
awesome. A lot of
awesome.
fun, man. It's been great.
Yeah, I mean, we got to do another one where we could really get a deep dive into the backslide of the SI life.
Oh God,
I know, because we'll bring a red wine in a towel because
in tears.
Yeah, because that really is something that I keep telling. I have some friends at Netflix. I'm like, you guys want to write a good story? Either do one on Kodak or SI. Like you had these perennial powers.
Yeah, who would have thought that Kodak would ever go down?
And they did it themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
2 companies like that shut their own feet, not toes, the whole foot off.
No, I remember, I went up to speak at Kodak when Richard Maxim was working there, and I knew a couple other people, and I got the tour of this. Man, they had 50 buildings in their whole area there, and that giant rolls of Kodachrome, 3 feet wide and all that. And it's like, who'd have thought that would go away?
Just like that. Boom. Done. Just like the magazine.
Yeah.
The moment, I forget what month of 2015, but the time they let the all staff go, I canceled my subscription.
That was it.
Why call it illustrated if you're not going to have photographers?
Right.
Call it sports writer.
Yeah, which it's always really been. I mean, no photographer has ever become managing editor of anything.
Right. Well, Heinz, I guess, is the highest up, right?
Well, he was DOP, but that was it. But so, as was Steve, as was.
But as a photographer, as a staff photographer,
right, as a shooter, you're right. He was basically the one who got
the highest up the ladder.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Peter, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You're the best.
It's been great. It's been
fun. Remember the last time we worked together? I We got a double truck doing that Laker game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Westbrook.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my God, Westbrook, yes,
yeah,
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Now he's a Laker.
Yeah.
We should go out and shoot him before he gets traded.
He could have been traded while we were talking here.
You're the best, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with former Sports Illustrated staff photographer, Peter Reed Miller. Please click the like button if you enjoyed the episode. Subscribe as well. Please leave a review if you enjoyed it. You can always follow the podcast on Instagram. And you can always find all the past shows on the website, justagoodconversation.com. Thank you for listening.